let's get into it. Chapter 0. Chapter Navigation. Now, the current chapter title will almost always be visible at the very top of the screen. And in the video description, there will be titles with timestamps that you can just click on and go straight to any particular chapter or subchapter. Now, there's a lot of prerequisite information that I feel I really need to get out of the way in these first few chapters before the actual editing begins. However, if you start to feel frustrated or bored and you're just going to click away from the video, instead what I'd like you to do is just skip straight to chapter 6.2. That's where the editing begins and you can really get into the meat of it, and you can always come back to watch these first few chapters at some other time. Chapter 1. Using YouTube's interface. As far as keyboard shortcuts go, J will rewind by 10 seconds, K will pause and play the video, and L will fast forward by 10 seconds. Furthermore, with the arrow keys, you can use left to go backwards 5 seconds and right to go forwards 5 seconds, and up and down will change the volume. However, the arrow keys are not reliable because if you ever click on the seek bar or the volume slider, they become highlighted and then the arrow keys will only affect that control. Shift period and shift comma are also very, very useful because they increase and decrease the playback speed, which is great for videos that just don't get to the point quickly enough. But don't use that on this video because the video I'm working on is already being watched at double or triple speed, so you won't be able to understand anything if you do that. The period and comma keys, however, will be very useful to you because when the video is paused, you can press them to advance forward or backwards by one single frame. However, sometimes it goes by 1 full second rather than 1 frame, which is really, really annoying. If you know how to fix this, let me know. Also, for extra long YouTube videos, if you click and hold the seek bar, that's the red thingy at the bottom, and you drag upwards, it will zoom in and give you a lot more room to find exactly where you want to go. Very useful. Now, I do strongly suggest that you watch this video on the youtube.com website and not as an embedded video in some other website. And that is simply because an embedded YouTube video player will show the title of the video on the top of that video player anytime you pause. And if that happens, that text is going to be covering up the text that I want to show you, which are chapter titles, at the top of my own video. So click through and watch it on YouTube so that you don't get all that extra annoying crap coming up off the top and off the bottom. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you can right-click and go to Inspect Element, and then go through here and find the element itself and just delete it. And don't worry, any changes you make are just client-side, so if you ruin something, just refresh the page and you'll be fine. You'll see me using that trick when I take screenshots of web pages sometimes, just to remove certain unsightly or irrelevant elements from the screenshot. Chapter 2. Things to know while watching my tutorial. Okay, first of all, you should be watching this on the largest monitor you possibly can at the highest resolution you possibly can. Do not watch this video on a cell phone. You must watch this video at 1080p or higher because there's a lot of small on-screen elements that you won't be able to read otherwise. Keep in mind that the exact time of day is always visible on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen down to the second. That's a program called T-Clock Redux. And of course, there's the keystroke visualizations with associated command visible on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. That was programmed using AutoHotKey, and it does nothing other than passively show that information. Chapter 3. My hardware. So I have an up desk that can be mechanically adjusted to go up or down, although I'm almost always in a seated position. I do like being able to move it a little bit. You don't need this. I have a highly adjustable chair from Maxnomic, which I like. It doesn't really matter what kind of chair you have as long as it has all the adjustments that you need. I personally like to remove the armrests, tilt the whole chair as far back as possible, and then scooch all the way forward so that I can use my desk as armrests. This also means that I need a deeper desk than I currently have, but I'm gonna get that later. By the way, I did make a fast as possible video that goes into a lot of detail about computer and workplace ergonomics, so check that out before you make any big modifications to your own setup. I have 4 monitors, 2 of which are the LG 31MU97-Bs, but I don't like the aspect ratio on them. It's 17:9, which is too wide in my opinion. The perfect aspect ratio is 16:10, but Linus says they don't really make that aspect ratio anymore. I have a Dell monitor like this at home, but the color accuracy of it is not very good, even with calibration. If you're doing color-sensitive work, which as an editor you probably are, you've just got to get something that can represent most of the Adobe RGB gamut. You don't need 4 monitors, but if you're editing professionally, you need 2 at a minimum. 1 monitor is not enough. I have 1 additional keyboard and 2 extra numpads, all of which are programmed using interception and intercept.exe, which is a superior alternative to Lua macros. However, interception is still not perfect, and I recently found out that it only supports 10 of each device type, which is why sometimes I'll plug stuff in and it doesn't even work. So I'm still looking for something that's even better. You don't need to get nearly so fancy, but I would suggest that you get a keyboard that has at least a couple of macro keys on it so that you can begin experimenting with doing all that. It is very, very useful to be able to chain commands together. And if you don't have a keyboard like that, never fear, you can always use AutoHotKey to reprogram all of your function keys to be macro keys themselves when you are in Premiere. I have scripts for that. It's quite easy to set up. My primary keyboard during this tutorial was the legendary Logitech G15. However, today I'm using the Corsair K95 RGB with Cherry MX Brown key switches, and it's better in almost every way. The Mechanical Keyboards subreddit really doesn't seem to like Corsair keyboards, citing poor build quality and buggy software. However, I have yet to encounter a single bug with the highly customizable Q 2.0 software, so I'm not sure what these guys are talking about. It's safe to say that this is my favorite keyboard in the world, and they don't make it anymore. Your mouse should be something that tracks well across the surface of your desk, and I prefer something wireless so that there's no cable drag either. And if possible, you should have macro keys on that mouse, because more macros is better. However, I do not have macro keys. The mouse I use is very special because it's the only one I know of in the world that does not aggravate my RSI, because I can click with my thumb and forefinger, which has made all the difference. I'll talk more about RSI later in the tutorial. My headphones are Bose Quiet Comfort 15s. I like them. They are indeed very comfortable, which is important for headphones you're going to be wearing for 8 hours. They should not clamp too hard to your head, especially if you have glasses. They require a AAA battery like every week to work at all, and also to power the noise cancellation, which is all right, but it's not good enough to cancel out any conversations happening in the room that you're in. What you really need is just a quiet environment to work in the first place. We don't really have this since we're all working in the same room. I'll talk more about that later on in the tutorial. I also have the palette gear and tangent ripple control surfaces. These interact directly with Premiere's SDK, which allows for some extra functions that you can't do with keyboard shortcuts. However, you won't see me using the palette gear at all in this tutorial. It simply didn't have the features that I needed at that time. They are slowly but surely adding more features in more programs, and if they keep it up, I think these will eventually become indispensable for video editing and other pursuits. I'm recording the voiceover for this tutorial on the Razer Sirene Pro, which I don't recommend because it introduces little crackles into the audio or will overmodulate it. So I've had to redo a lot of the voiceover for this tutorial. Now, Linus tells me that this could be due to incompatibility with the particular motherboard that I use, so your mileage may vary. I also apologize if the voiceover sounds a little bit different at times and the levels aren't perfect. I did my best, but it's 4 hours long. What do you want from me? And finally, the one peripheral to rule them all, the OpenBCI Ultra Cortex Mark III Supernova. Now, I don't actually use this in my daily work, but the idea is that one day, perhaps decades from now, I'll be able to use technology like this to remove all of my peripherals and just use my brain to directly control a computer. Until then, this is just an interesting experiment. As for my computer hardware, I'm on Windows 10 Pro 64-bit with an Intel Core i7-6950X CPU at 3 GHz. I've got 64 GB of RAM and a Generation 9 NVIDIA Titan X GPU. It's pretty hardcore. It's all inside a Corsair Crystal 570X with lots of unnecessary RGB. You can see the full details in this video. We store our footage on a server that was custom built by Linus with 24 terabytes of NVMe SSDs in some flavor of RAID, with 10 gigabit Ethernet connections to all the editors. At the very least, you do need an SSD to store all of your footage on while you're editing it. A hard disk drive is far too slow for that. Chapter 4. How I use AutoHotKey. AutoHotKey is a scripting program with Windows API integration that allows you to send keystrokes and mouse clicks and do all sorts of really cool stuff. Basically, I just use it to give myself additional, very powerful features that Windows and Premiere simply do not have. So the first time that I launch a particularly interesting or useful AutoHotKey script, I will halt the tutorial while I explain it. And from that point on, you can always just look at the visualizer to see what I'm using at any given moment, even if I'm not directly calling it out. And I will also provide timestamps in the video description to every single time that I talk about a new AutoHotKey script. So you can always go and watch those if you ever want to know how a script works. And of course, all these scripts are free and publicly available to download off of my GitHub if you want to use them yourself. Now, if you're not interested in AutoHotKey or automation of any kind for any reason, that's okay. You can just skip forward through the sections where I talk about my AutoHotKey scripts by tapping the L key on your keyboard and then tapping J once so that you don't overshoot. But basically, all that my scripts allow me to do is the same things that you can accomplish manually, except much, much faster. Chapter 5. Preparing to edit the video. Now I'm using OBS to record this, and I'm using a very, very nice multi-monitor automatic scene switcher plugin, which I will link to in the description. So here's just a really quick view of the layout of those screens. Mostly I'm working on monitor 2, that's the primary. So I have the calendar up here. This is how we track all of our videos and our integrations. Some of it's blurred. You can see the Razer Blade Late 2016 is due tomorrow, which is on a Saturday, on the 31st of December. And that's on Floatplane. It also goes up on YouTube 2 weeks later on the 14th of January 2017. This is the video tracker, which I programmed using Google Sheets, and it shows who is responsible for writing and hosting and shooting the A-roll and shooting the B-roll and editing for each video that we do. I am responsible for editing the Razer Pro Late 2016 video today, and it is organized by Floatplane release schedule, which is our early access platform that goes out 1 week before YouTube and has no integrations. And each time that we begin a whole new video, we just copy and paste a group of folders that have a bunch of assets in them already in order to begin the process. So I'm going to that folder on the server, which has the exact same name as it does on the trackers. So I've copied and am now pasting that name onto the project template that I have. Everyone has one of these, but this one's mine. And here we go, starting a new project. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here already. My main sequence in this case is a 1080p cineform preview sequence, just with 3 things in it. And it's already shouting at me to change the name, so I paste in the name that I already copied. So dash Floatplane to indicate that this is for Floatplane. This is the early access version. So now I'm going to the all footage folder, and I'm going to drag the entire folder straight into Premiere, into the root of the bins. And it is importing the footage now, but my cursor is on the wrong screen, so you can't tell. Now, while it's doing that, I'll go and check on the slogans. First thing I got to do, well, one of them, is to get a slogan for the intro. If you watch our content, you know what that's all about, so I'm just looking for one. Actually, we don't do it this way anymore. After these all ran out, we started having the writers put in their own slogans, and that's worked a lot better. Linus made me do it as good enough, so I'll cross that off and go into here and paste it in here. Control A to select all, paste, and Control W is my mod to close the title, or that's done with AutoHotKey. And I delete the thing on there because what you're looking at actually was a title over top of a nested sequence, and the title is already in the nested sequence, so it's also directly above the nested sequence just for the convenience of being able to double click on it and get straight into that title. Okay, so now I'm looking at the all footage bin, which is supposed to have all the footage, but if I go into B-roll 1, there's a folder there that's not supposed to be there. Those are clips from Linus, and those are supposed to go in the L-roll folder, which stands for Linus roll. It's a stupid name, but basically it just means clips from the writer.
With that said, the webcam is still pretty good, even if it hasn't improved much, if at all.
Usually I don't look at footage before I start editing the A-roll, but in this case I just wanted to make sure that these were done correctly.
With that said, the webcam is still pretty good, even if it hasn't improved much, if at all.
Linus likes to record the webcam clips on the webcam, which makes sense. So now I'm opening up the script, and it looks like I have V3 and V7 here. I already spoke to Brandon, and he told me the correct one to use is V7. Okay, I wouldn't have known that otherwise. So here we go. We do use Word. This is Word 2007. I know it's stupid. There's probably better scripting programs we could use. Leave a comment if you know of one. The script here has obviously the whole video, and it has some comments. Now you can increase the size of the comment section by going to that little menu thing I just showed you, but it's still not good enough. And if I scroll down, you'll see that a lot of the comments are not even entirely there. You see the little stupid little double, the triple lines, and then they go over here to show you more of them. It's horrible. So instead of relying on that, I just space out the script like this so that the comments always line up with the actual script itself. So I'm just going to fast forward here for you because this is pointless. I'm just making it easier for myself to read through the script. And then I save this as something called Taran ruined version because I'm going to be making notes in here. I'm going to be moving stuff around. No one else should use this version. It's just for the editor, which is me, to mess around with and do stuff that I want. So like I'm deleting the stuff that's not important to me and so on and so forth. Okay, so there's the script, and I've got everything all ready to go. There's the A-roll. Now I'm ready to begin editing. So first I'm actually going to switch from recording my screen with OBS over to Shadowplay instead. And Shadowplay is magnificent because it uses only your GPU, your NVIDIA GPU, to record your screen and has absolutely no impact that I can find on the CPU. So the colors are slightly less accurate, and it can only record one screen at a time, but I need really quick, snappy response times when I'm doing the A-roll cut, so recording with Shadowplay was ideal for this section. Chapter 6.1. The A-roll rough cut begins here, but first I have to explain how a lot of AutoHotKey scripts work. Okay, so as the edit begins, I'm going to do 4 important things in 10 seconds. First, I set both audio tracks to mono using the right track. Then I add a dynamics preset, which includes a compressor and a limiter. Then I add 7 decibels of gain, and finally go to the master clip to add a lumetri LUT for color correction. Okay, that was pretty fast, so I'm just going to pause the video here for a moment. I hope you see the value now in using scripts and macros to automate your workflow, because that would have taken a lot longer to do manually. If you don't want an in-depth explanation, you can just skip to the next chapter where the edit continues, but I'm going to rewind here and just explain each one of those tricks. First up, we have the monoMaker, programmed in AutoHotKey, of course, and also launched with a single button on my secondary keyboard, or primary keyboard. What it does is it opens up the Modify Clip menu and waits for the color of the OK button to appear so that it knows the panel is loaded, and then according to whatever parameter you gave it, it will check either the left or the right checkboxes on both rows using the colors of the boxes themselves to determine whether or not there is a check mark already in that box. And then it presses OK to accept that, and now we have the left and the right track using the same audio. Because basically how we film is we put the gain a little bit higher on one of the tracks just so that we have some more dynamic range in case there's clipping. This next AutoHotKey script you're going to see me using constantly throughout the entire video. It's my script to apply any given preset onto any clip or group of clips using a single keyboard shortcut. What it does is it uses Premiere's built-in shortcuts to highlight the effects panel, another built-in shortcut to highlight the find box of the effects panel. Now it takes note of the position of the caret, which is the blinking vertical line. Then it selects and deletes any text that might already be in the find box. and it then inserts the text that I want, which in this case is 2.4 limiter. So that will search for the preset and bring it up to the top, where now the cursor is able to move down and to the right, click on that preset, and drag it back to the cursor's original coordinates, thus applying that preset onto whatever clip your cursor was hovering over. It does all this within half a second, and every time I use it, it saves something like 5 seconds, which adds up enormously over the course of a day. Little side note here, obviously there's no shortcut inside of Premiere to do this for you, because otherwise I would just use that. I've been bugging the Adobe guys to put this in the program for real for maybe 2 years now, but until they do, everyone else is stuck doing this manually every single time, which is just horrible. This next script is really simple. All it does is press F2 to open the audio gain panel, type in 7 to add 7 gain, and then it presses enter to apply. And then we have to wait for the little loading bar because Premiere is really slow when calculating gain for some reason. And then as we're waiting an eternity for that loading bar to finish, I go up here to the master clip of the A-roll, and then I use my preset application script again, this time to apply the LTT color preset, which is a lumetri color effect that uses Brandon's specially created LUT, designed for our set with our lighting. So now the color correction for the A-roll needs no further tweaks. Okay, here we have another AutoHotKey script. This is the, right-click playhead mod, as you can see, and basically it just allows me to click anywhere on the timeline in order to move the playhead. The standard procedure is having to click all the way up there at the very top of the timeline where all those numbers are. It leads to you accidentally entering different sequences and clicking on markers and stuff, and it's just not as good because you don't have as much of an area to click on. So basically how this works is in Premiere, when I right-click, it looks at the exact color underneath the cursor, and if it finds a known color of the timeline, AutoHotKey will fire a keystroke, in this case \, which in Premiere has been mapped to the command move playhead to cursor. The upshot of all of this is that I can right-click on any blank part of the timeline, and the playhead will move to that location.
The unboxing experience really hasn't changed a lot since the original Razer Blade 14. In fact, not much has changed outwardly about the machine either, aside from the textured LTT design by Ed.
Pausing a moment here to explain one more AutoHotKey script. This is my Instant Application Switcher script, which works using single button presses. That says Control F4, but it's actually triggered by the 15th macro button on my Logitech G15 keyboard, so it's one key press only. I have 5 keys in total, all with their own dedicated applications. They're extremely close to my left hand, so that my pinky or ring finger can press any of them at any time. And pressing one of these keys will instantaneously activate the latest active window of that particular program. So even if I have 10 Explorer windows open, it will always open the latest one. And this is incredibly useful when I'm trying to move files around. You will see me using this constantly throughout the entire video, and it is by far the best thing I've ever scripted. I highly recommend that you get this for yourself, and I have a 10-minute long video linked in the description, which shows exactly how to set this all up. It's quite easy and will save you an enormous amount of time. Chapter 6.2. All right, that's all the prerequisite knowledge that you need, and this is when the editing actually begins. Okay, so now that I've explained all those AutoHotKey scripts and you understand them, I'm going to rewind. We're going to watch the whole thing in real time. It's only 10 seconds, and you'll see how everything fits together and how fast it goes.
Quiet on set. Razer.
All right, so select the clip, change the audio to mono from the left channel, apply the limiter, add audio gain, and go to the master clip and apply color correction. And now we can begin editing.
16 since launch. In fact, I bought a... Yep, very quiet on set.
As I edit this, just keep in mind that I remapped KiIl over to ASD, along with several other very useful and commonly used shortcuts so that they're all directly underneath my left hand.
I've had a review unit of the Razer Blade late 2016 since launch. In fact, I bought a dozen of the first operation line back in October, so I could bust them up and give them to my staff at our Christmas party.
And here, to ensure consistent audio levels while I edit, I'm setting my computer volume to 18 and then not touching it.
I've had a review unit of the Razer Blade late 2016 since launch. In fact, I bought... The unboxing experience,
Right-click playhead mod there.
which you won't find on the one that you buy at the store anyway. It still rocks a normal, non-magnetized power cord, hint, hint, razor, to go with its 3 USB 3 ports, audio jack, Thunderbolt 3 port, and HDMI port. But
Gotta check this audio here to see if he gave a note to the editor.
Flow, and I didn't do a pass of this for general flow, and I kind of broke it here. Hold on a second.
Nope, nothing important.
it still rocks a normal, non-magnetized power cord, hint. In fact, not much has changed outwardly about the machine either, aside from the textured LTT designed by Ed. Buy at the store. Hold on, in fact, not much has changed outwardly about the machine in general, aside from the unboxing experience really hasn't. In fact, not much has changed.
160.
By the way, my visualizer script is not always perfect. This is supposed to be Control F4.
5-watt power adapter, and some papers to accidentally throw away before you remember about the earth and shit.
Ripple trim here.
In fact, not much.
Rewind, ripple trim.
In fact, not much has changed outwardly about the machine either, aside from the texture
Skip forward here.
that seems to have been born from a desire for RGB backlighting and one that bothered
Stations
on the 1080p late 2016
$500
plus a video card. So it got some upgrade
time of
being one of the most noticeable day to day. And while the blade has been good enough for a while for me to use as a daily driver for some time,
Just searching for where these clips line up.
the improvement to the surface temperatures of the
with that said, the webcam is still pretty good, even though it hasn't improved. My favorite laptop keyboard 15 model that seems to have been born from a desire for RGB backlighting and one that bothers me pretty much every day.
has
Changed, even going back a few generations. But when you look closelier, Razer has been absolutely refining the experience.
improvement to surface temperatures of the device during use.
Add edit to all tracks, and ripple delete clip at playhead. What you just saw was a very, very simple AutoHotKey script. In fact, you can just do this as a regular macro. All it is the combination of U, which I have mapped to select clip at playhead, and then Control-Alt-Shift-D, which I've set to ripple delete in Premiere. I did that to avoid crosstalk with other shortcuts. This is the only AutoHotKey script that I had in my previous tutorial, which is kind of funny. But anyway, let's just rewind and you'll see it in action once more. So, make a cut on the timeline, F1, F1, and we continue.
The improvement to the surface temperature
The device during use being among the most noticeable day to day.
So this feels like there should be a paragraph break here, and that made it kind of hard for me to find it in the script, so I just added it in there.
And while the
Using the rolling edit tool here.
most noticeable day to day. And while the blade has been $5,000
US dollars on these machines for my entire staff. So, in spite of the very small improvements, do I think the blade late 2016 is the best blade yet? You're damn right I do. Let's just hope that they don't trash the 2017 model by putting that awful keyboard from the Blade Pro on it, or the next time my employees get new computers, they might be from Apple.
And cut, and this is all nonsense.
Is it less noticeable?
Okay, I can cut that without even watching it.
So thanks
I
for
can
watching.
skip
This
that
is
without
something
even
let's
watching it yet.
to check out my review
Review of the Blade Pro, the bigger, badder brother.
And cut. Okay, A-roll rough cut is done. Now you might notice that I did not finesse those cut points very well. They're still pretty rough, and that's okay, because I'll fix them up as I go later. Because if I were to do really precise cut points on my first pass of the A-roll, I might actually lose a lot of work because I was making really nice edits, and then it turned out that I should have skipped that whole section. So I fix it up when I do the next pass. And pin tool to make him a bit louder right there, and go back and do a W to move the intro closer, another W on the other side to move that part closer. And now that I'm done, I just zoom out and look at my work, and holy moly, there's only 5 cuts in this entire edit. And that's just because Linus is a very experienced host by now. As you can see, he did basically 75% of the video without stopping. But because I'm trying to make an editing tutorial here, I want to show you guys what it's actually like to edit the A-roll of a typical video, where you're going to have to do a lot more work than this. So what I've done is I've added to this video the A-roll cutting of the MacBook Pro 2016 video. So, Chapter 7, MacBook Pro A-roll rough cut. After this is done, we'll go back to the Razer video. Also, unlike the previous chapter, I'm not going to be pausing this one to tell you about how a particular AutoHotKey script works, because I've already told you about them. Okay, let's start her up again. Same start as last time. First I do the monoMaker, this time on left, doesn't really matter. Then I add the limiter and compressor using my preset AutoHotKey script. And of course, on the master clip, I apply the LUT that Brendan has made for our color. Now, actually, at this stage, he was still messing around with trying to get it to work properly. It was a little bit too yellow, and so I'm fiddling around here, trying to figure out which version of his LUT I'm supposed to be using, and I end up using the temporary one that he agreed would be okay. It looks a little bit too blue, honestly, and we did fix that later.
Apple products get covered to death, and for the most part by people who are
Adding back in that dynamics effect.
more intimately familiar
Right
with
here, I manually adjust the gain to add 5 decibels. I want to get it to just barely kiss -3.
So it's important then to
That's what we decided sounds the best. So now I'm going to take a quick look at the very first frame, which always contains the slate, see if there's anything unusual on here, anything I should know. And I didn't see anything, so I'm going to continue and just look at the script right now to make sure that I'm started where I'm supposed to be, and let's begin.
Apple
Lol.
Apple products get covered to death, and for the most part by people who are more intimately familiar.
what this means.
These stupid Lumetri looks keep reappearing, so I have to keep pushing them back.
Prospective buyers and mobile computers moving forward. Here we go.
Oh, I accidentally cut that piece out because I thought it was useless.
Are you interested?
See, that piece was useless. You see? I always got to listen to those little ones.
Apple products get covered to death.
No.
And for the most part by people who are more intimate. So 2016, from the perspective of a longtime Windows user who isn't expecting to switch platforms anytime soon. How's that? Okay.
So that was an alternative intro.
Every Apple product gets covered to death.
Oh, he's got
For the
3.
most part by people who are more intimately familiar.
Let's see what
Actually change the algorithm much. I think you
let's see what he did all the way over here, because he might be doing it again for all I know. You see, I always edit to the waveform, always on the first pass.
So my MacBook Pro.
Here you see that I'm setting my audio volume to some number and then I'm not touching it. And as before, all of my most commonly used shortcuts are directly underneath my left hand for quick access.
Every Apple product gets covered to death. And for the most part by people who are more
Windows user who isn't expecting to switch platforms anytime
So we usually keep our spoken word anywhere between -3 and -15-ish. And here I'm using my ripple delete clip at playhead macro again.
So my MacBook Pro 2016 took so long to arrive because I
don't even need to watch this, so I'm going to move to the next gap where he messes up and fix that, and then fix the next one, and so on.
completely redesigned keyboard, a gigantic trackpad, a cooling system that gets a little showy under heavy load, but whose
a 5500 milliamp hour battery,
a 5500 milliamp hour battery, a touch bar,
Yup.
2880 by 1880 wide gamut display with a blinding peak brightness of 5, a touch bar above battery,
Okay, so that's what I have to find.
a 5500 milliamp hour battery, a touch bar above the complete by 1880
wide gamut display with a blinding peak brightness of 500 nits. It's absolutely stunning, a surprise to no one, by the way. Some not overly loud but very competent speakers, a 5500 milliamp hour battery,
There
a
it
touch bar
is.
above the completely redesigned keyboard,
F1. Yup.
a 5500 milliamp hour battery, a touch bar above.
Okay, now go to the next one.
If you mean by that is
Is the MacBook Pro 2016 overpriced for the Let's start though with some spec discussion. Is the MacBook Pro 2016 overpriced for the hardware that you get? If by that you mean, is Apple's markup over cost from their
And there we go. We found it.
hardware that you get?
if by that you mean
And F1. Yep.
if you mean by that
Is Apple's markup over their cost from their suppliers higher than the typical PC OEM? Then yes.
Let's see where he starts here.
and IO is well yeah and IO is
I wasn't satisfied with where I made the cut, so I just went backwards.
And IO is
Oh, got it. See? You just gotta look for the waveforms. You get good at it. You can almost recognize words.
depending on and IO is and I Intel's Thunderbolt
See where
3
that matches.
has some huge real-world
vastly superior.
And cut. Yep.
Intel's Thunderbolt
And
3.
F1. Yep.
Intel's Thunderbolt 3 has some huge,
Go to this one.
making matters worse.
Okay, that's what we gotta look for.
Ugh,
Oh, he has an extra thing there.
Ugh.
See, I always gotta check those.
Ugh.
Those might not be relevant. But you can see that I matched up the waveform, and it was very easy to tell
ugh.
where that belongs. So let's just cut the
Making
first
matters worse,
in.
Apple has intention,
Go to the next
and
one.
that- and the palm rejection is
outstanding. Which I can't really say about the keyboard. Out of the gate, I absolutely
it was,
is outstanding.
Found it.
Not so much the case with the keyboard. Out of
Sometimes I get lucky.
and the palm rejection is outstanding. The palm rejection, which I was really worried about when I saw
how big it was, is outstanding.
I like his first take
And
of
the palm
this, so I'm just
rejection
gonna keep that.
has become second nature in
minutes, and the palm rejection, which I was really worried about.
I
when
color it
saw
purple
how big
because
it
I'm
was,
not quite sure about it yet.
outstanding.
And W
And the palm rejection is outstanding.
and Q.
Which I
Yeah,
can't
I'm gonna
really
keep it.
say
So I
about
turned it blue again.
Out of the gate, I absolutely
is outstanding.
Cut.
Though I can't say the same of the keyboard. I don't hate it
Yep.
as much as I did.
I'll fill that
initially.
gap in later.
And
And go to the next one. See how quick this is?
Pro means
you want peripherals and some more beyond that. The true power users. Those guys are going to customize and hack the crap out of it to get the experience they want anyway. Whether that's, remapping key or definitely yank in the bar. At least they will if they can afford one. And they're willing to put out.
Okay, looks like he does the pro thing a lot sooner than that.
Pro means you want peripherals and back to the keyboard. I never got comfortable enough with it. I felt like I wanted to work on a longer writing project, and typing suggestions in the touch bar won't help anyone but the most
pro means
you want project, and typing suggestions in the touch bar won't help anyone but the most egregious hunt and peckers. Which is exactly what allowed me to come to peace with this product. I'm not repeating everyone else saying, this laptop is pro. If Apple's publicly saying it, duh. Nothing we make is designed for pros. How many actually bloody pro creative professionals are even out there? And as for programmers, no escape key? I mean, who cares? You
I think it's going to be
onto
here.
a Chromebook anyway.
Cut.
Apple has redefined the conventional product
Undo.
tiers in a way that, apparently, given that these things are selling like hotcakes, makes sense to people. Mainstream now means browsing Facebook.
Cut. Right there.
not having
100
Oh,
printers
not
are
yet.
connected. And Pro now
There
means
we go.
you want peripheral
Okay,
some
found it.
decent performance. Or in the case of the 13-inch, you don't even need the horses. You just want to be one of the cool kids.
And
spending more money
F1 to cut that whole section
Pro
out.
means you want peripherals and
And
some more
now
performance.
Or in the case of the 13-inch,
go back.
Some decent performance. Pro means
you want peripherals and
some decent performance. Pro means you want peripherals and some more performance. Or in the case of the 13-inch,
Let's see, which take do I like the best?
you want peripherals. You want peripherals and
some more performance. Or in the case of the 13-inch, you don't even really.
I'm not sure why I decided to cut it together that way, but that'll be covered by B-roll, so there's not going to be a jump cut.
Want to feel like one of the cool kids, and spending more money to adjust your volume or scrub through a YouTube video faster is going to get you there. And anyone beyond that, the true power users, well, those guys are going to customize and hack the crap out of it to get the experience they want anyway, even if that's just putting yank in the bar. Or in the case of the 13-inch. And anyone beyond that, the true power users, well, those guys are going to customize and hack the crap out of it to get the experience they want anyway, even if that's just putting Yankat in the light bar. Touch bar. That's okay, I was kind of stuffy during that last thing anyway. Sorry, I'm almost there. Or in the case of the 13-inch, you don't even need the horses, but you want to feel like one of the cool kids, and spending more money to adjust your volume or scrub through YouTube videos a little faster will get you there. And as for anyone beyond that, the true through a YouTube video faster is going to get you there.
And cut both of those.
And as for anyone beyond that, the true power users, well, those guys are going to customize and hack the crap out of it to get the experience they want anyway. At least they will if they can afford one, and they're willing to put up with the well-managed during standby and under light loads, but less than advertised battery life.
And cut. And then go to the next thing. Q.
So thanks for watching, guys. Like,
And there's
dislike,
the
leave.
end.
You should totally join. Now that you're done doing all that stuff, you're probably wondering what's to watch next.
And
Check out this
W
video on
right now. Done. And then move that over there. Okay, see? So that's how you edit together a roll. Now you could see that for some of those cut togethers, I was really efficient, and I found where I needed to go right away. And for others, I had to look around a lot more. And then once I found it, I didn't immediately have a good idea of how I wanted to edit it together, because I had to listen to the alternate takes and so on and so forth. The footage you just watched is already a bit out of date. There's a couple more things that I do now that make things even better. So first of all, I will make sure that my A-roll clip is set to dual mono. And you have to do this from the bin. You cannot do it on the timeline, and that's what always screwed me up. So you go here, you do this setting, mono, 2 tracks, one of them left, one of them right, and then both of them will play simultaneously, and it will not be in stereo. This is fantastic. So if someone is shooting with channel left on a lav mic and channel right on a shotgun mic, you can very easily just grab that clip, grab all the clips, change them to dual mono, and then you don't need to worry about left-right stereo nonsense. However, if you do this, you will find that one single mono audio track doesn't sound as full or as rich as 2 tracks in stereo. If you double the audio back up again, then it sounds fine. But if you just have one of them, for some reason, it feels like a lot of the bass is gone. Even if you increase the gain by like 3 decibels, it still doesn't quite sound right. Here, let me just show you what I mean.
Putting up to 4 1080p systems on one screen. It's great for control rooms. Putting up to 4 1080p systems on one screen. It's great for control rooms.
If you know what's going on there, let me know, but I'm still learning how to fiddle with audio. Also, I now use the audio track mixer, which is its own special panel, to apply audio limiting and compression rather than doing it on a clip-by-clip basis. This is fantastic because you can do one setting that applies to the entire audio track for the whole time, and you don't have to worry about it or fiddle with it. I use these settings: brick wall limiter, threshold -10, margin -3. Honestly, it doesn't sound the best. People have complained it sounds kind of hot. It sounds a bit like it's clipping just a bit, but this is a lot better than not doing it and having real clipping. And because there's no presets for the audio track mixer, I now simply have this as a part of my saved template file. Anyway, now we will return to the Razor video, and now we are on Chapter 8, the B-roll first pass. This is where most of the editing gets done. So now I'm going to organize my B-roll. I see I have B-roll 2 on the top and B-roll 1 on the bottom, so I'm just switching that around. I actually have a shortcut for back in the bins, but I didn't use it there. Right here, I'm using another AutoHotKey script that saves a lot of time, which basically just locks video track 1 and audio track 1, which again, there's no internal shortcut in Premiere to do that. Basically how it works is it searches for an image that I've already taken as a screenshot, which corresponds to the lock and then the little A1 or the little V1, and then it clicks in that area to either click the lock on or off. And I do that because that way I can use ripple trim, and I can use add edit to all tracks, and I can do all sorts of stuff without ruining the underlying A-roll. Alright, so now that I've done the A-roll first pass and probably taken a little break, I am going to the bin that contains the B-roll that I've already loaded in, and I scrolled through to load up all of the thumbnails. Anytime that you leave a bin, the thumbnails are destroyed, so I just keep those bins open all the time. Going into the script here, I'm seeing that it refers to the L roll of this video, so I'm grabbing that folder and dragging it into the project root bin, and you can see there's a lot of stuff in there that's not supported. These are just CSV files. That doesn't matter, we don't need those. That's just stuff that Linus was using to create these assets. Now, L roll is our stupid, silly name for Linus roll or Luke roll. It's just kind of an inside joke of this is the folder that the writer will put all of their important assets into. That's what it means. It's stuff from the writer. Anyway, so now I'm able to begin the first pass of the B-roll. And looking at the script here, it's referring to clip from Christmas prank video. But because the working title that we use for the server is usually not the same as what goes up on YouTube, I can just use Google or YouTube to search for this video, find it immediately, and then because it's on our own channel, I can click the Info and Settings pencil icon and see immediately what the original raw file name was for that video. And now what I'm doing is I'm deleting the old bad video exports. We always append our exports with RC1, RC2, RC3 each time that we need to export again because we're fixing errors. So all those old exports, we don't need to save them. So anytime I see extra exports for a video that has long since gone out, I will delete them to give ourselves more space on the server. So, one of a kind, blah, 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 give them away to my employees. Let's see here. So he took a bunch of pictures of him pranking us with these. And again, if you don't understand what's going on, it's because you haven't watched the Christmas quote prank unquote that he did to us. So because I edited that video originally and hundreds of others, I have this sort of internal mental library and catalog of all of the stuff that we've done. I don't have to ask anybody. I don't have to bother anybody. Our new editors, they have to ask me all the time, hey, when did you get a shot of Linus's socks and sandals? And then I'll tell them. So having that backlog of knowledge is valuable. Now again, the keystroke visualizer is not perfect. This was actually Control-Shift-F, which is set to frame size. And oh my god, do not ever use scale to frame size, which is very, very much misnamed, because scale to frame size doesn't actually change the scale variable. It changes some variable somewhere that you can only change back by hitting scale to frame size again. And what it does is destroy the resolution of your photographs or blow them up so that the pixels are as big as hams. It's horrible no matter what happens. Set to frame size will change the scale variable up in the Effect Controls panel, and that's the one that you should be using. Anyway, What I'm doing right now is using the ripple tangent to do color correction. This is a specialty piece of hardware known as a control surface that is used with Premiere or other applications, which allows you to do stuff significantly more easily than the keyboard or mouse would allow. I absolutely love the ripple tangent. There's a lot of things that do annoy me about it, like the fact that there's only 2 programmable buttons. What? But the pros far outweigh the cons, and I'm wanting to get one of these for every single editor because it just makes color correction so much easier and therefore so much more likely that it'll actually be done. You can see the Lumetri scopes in the bottom right-hand corner of the main monitor shifting around. That's just me trying to modify the white balance of this photograph, which is just horrible, and ultimately I don't really succeed. You do need to be working with a decent photo or video to start off with if you want any chance of making the color look good. Now, one note, I have the Lumetri scopes visible at all times. I did some experiments previously. It didn't seem to slow everything down, but it might, and going into the future, I should really just turn those off when I don't need them. Okay, so now that I've done that color correction, I'm just turning it on and off to see the efforts of my labor, and it doesn't actually look all that much better, but it looks a bit better, so whatever, we're gonna go with it. This is the Christmas video that I'm scrubbing through, trying to find some good footage of all the boxes. Let's see. I got some shots of the presents. I also shot this video like I was on camera. Oh, here's a good shot. This is something Linus took and I put it in the video. So let's just grab that footage here. I'm not exactly sure what order this will go in. Christmas party. Okay, then we cut to the Christmas party. That's right. That makes more sense. That is the rate stretch tool, which allows you to, well, change the rate just by using the tool. I have that on Y by default, but who knows what you would want to have it on. And here I am using the Lumetri to change the white balance of the room a little bit more than it already has been. This one also, I copy-pasted that Lumetri thing, and I'm just trying to fix it up. This is the white balance that I'm changing. There we go. Those both look a little bit better. And that refresh of all the words on the screen, that's just because my script is so terrible that it stops working after like a couple hours, so I just have it refresh the whole script for the key revealer just every 30 minutes, which is such a janky solution, but I couldn't figure out what the bug is, so that's the solution. Okay, so this is footage of Linus faking the receiving of the razor blade. Okay, I'm intentionally going to keep the audio in there, and because it's stereo and I want it to be mono, I use the monoMaker again.
Did it take me so long to do this review?
I'm keeping the audio in there because it adds some production value. And I know that
very
shot goes to that because it was in the script. I'll show you that if you didn't see it already. You see there? Done 0088.
review.
So I already had grabbed that. I don't. This is so quick. I don't even have time to explain. There we go.
Special blade.
Yep.
A one-of-a-kind.
And now we cut to the very special blade. Let's see. 115. Let's go find it. That looks like it's going to be right there. Awesome. See? This is why we have the shooters label their B-roll in the script as they are shooting that B-roll, because it allows for the intent of the writer and then of the shooter to be communicated to the editor and ultimately to the audience. So here it says reveal shot with dope AF lighting, which doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to ask Brandon, and that conversation was captured live.
Hey Brandon. Yeah. What's your reveal shot with dope AF lighting? It doesn't say. Could be anything. B-roll 2?
Yeah. So there's a reveal there. This is quick. Cut, cut, cut. And then there's a.
I need a whole laptop.
Yeah. Up.
It's this one?
And it goes from black to it's really fast.
Okay. I'm not sure if you could have written that in here.
Sorry, I did those shots after the fact, and then after my first pass of B-roll, so I didn't put all the secondary B-roll in.
Well, if there's another one, I'll ask.
Yeah. The rest of it was just gone.
T edition blade that will soon be in the hands of a very
Okay, so Brendan told me that these are supposed to go together with dip to black, so I'm finding a dip to black and putting it in there. Okay, it doesn't quite come in at the right time.
soon be in the hands of a very
bit better.
lucky winner who graciously agreed to let me show.
And it ends there. I'm just going to put a marker instead of... See, if I put a marker, it's permanent. But the program might crash if you put markers on footage, because it tries to save the marker onto the footage file rather than just in Premiere, so sometimes it just crashes. It's terrible. So here I found a pretty good spot. What I need is, like, real quick, the light coming in, the light coming out. This is a thing that Brendan likes to do, but he doesn't always move the light in a way that is conducive to editing it together in this way. So you can see that this shot, he actually did a great job of getting it working, but sometimes he just kind of flounders the light all over the place, and I really don't have a good quick way to edit it together. So yeah, in that case I could use dip to blacks, but I could use those anytime I wanted. The whole point of this is that it's done in camera, and that makes it more cool. So let's see if I can do this one. Oh, you can select in-out points on the thumbnails as well, but I usually don't. Let's see here. If you double click, it goes to the source monitor, but again, you should already know that if you're watching this tutorial. And out. Okay, good enough. Let's drag that one in. Let's see if there's any more. Did I see if there's any more? I don't know. I'm going to put the markers on that one as well. So now I have these three, and I'm going to see if I can edit them together in a way that works well and that won't take me forever.
Signed LTT edition.
Okay, I want that to go sooner, so I use the slide tool, which I have mapped to H. It's fantastic. I don't use it often, but when I do use it, it is sure useful. Autosave, and then let's do that. Oh, I see. Okay, I wanted them to go faster because they're not quite fast enough. So if I use this, then I map up, I line up the markers with each other. Yep, there we go. See, that goes together really well. Oh, perfect. Perfect timing. Okay, and now we go to the big shot. Ta-da! Let's see. Let's start it there. No, right there. Come on. And does it hold? Yes, it does. Okay, there we go. See? Perfect. Oh, there we go. It actually begins a little later. So I actually could have used, I could have used Q right there to move that clip and trim at the same time, because I have V1 and A1 already locked, so it won't interfere with them. And notice I did a J-cut right there, where the audio starts before you see it. J-cuts are more natural because you're hearing something before you see it, which is very similar to the way that real life works, where you'll hear something and then you turn your head and you'll see it. Just, you know, fun fact for you. I learned that from, I forget who it was, some famous editor guy. And the opposite of that is called an L-cut, where you see something before you hear it. Anyway, what I'm doing now is I'm adding some animation, there we go, to move the logo so that your eye is drawn right to the little square. Excellent, because you're probably looking at the logo. Also, the color correction on this shot is kind of terrible. The logo is not nearly green enough. It looks nice. So I think, am I going to change the color correction? Let's find out. It was a little fast, so I changed that up. That begins a little quickly, so I'm going to once again just make sure that, here we go, just make sure that that begins gradually. You can see from the top one. Oh, hang on. Oh, see, it moved backwards. You don't want that. So from the top one, if I move that to be a horizontal line, it won't move backwards. And there we are. Very nice. I actually have never done that before, but leading the eye to where it's going to be for the next shot is always a nice trick. And saving my project, because why the hell not? Oh, what I'm doing here is I'm just coloring the footage. So one of the B-roll bins I colored sky blue, the other one I'm coloring red, and then because I didn't do it beforehand, I have to go back and do that on the timeline as well. And that helps me a lot just when cutting, to just differentiate between the A-roll and the B-roll, because sometimes they get mixed a little bit. There's a good reason for that, and you might see that later. Like if I have to do a transition in a very particular way, I might have to move the A-roll footage up, although I hardly ever do. So at this point, let's see what's going on here. I am looking for the next shot, and I just read it. I am looking for this one. Oh, there it is. Oh, he's taking it out. Okay, so now that I'm done with that, let's see, I'm just making a note to myself, taking a break now that I have finished just a little bit. And that's actually really important. I have found that your mental state is important when editing. It's not just about how fast you can edit. It's also about being in the right sort of frame of mind. And if you don't make it to the right frame of mind, you're going to be inefficient. Sometimes it helps to just walk away. Also, it's good for your body. You know, you don't want to be sitting down all day. So there it is. And break over now.
The unboxing experience really hasn't changed a lot.
Okay, let's see what the script says here. Glam done 0085. Find that here. I could use the search box, the find box, but it's actually faster for me to just scroll through and find it myself most of the time. Put that down. Ooh, that's a long clip.
The unboxing experience really hasn't changed a lot since the original Razer Blade 14. You get a laptop, Razer's character. The unboxing experience really hasn't
Okay,
changed
so
a
here
lot.
obviously you can see I'm just trying to sync up what Linus is saying with the visuals on screen, which is kind of hard because it's one single shot
Since
that
the
has
original
multiple
Razer
things
Blade
going on.
14,
So I actually have to
you get a
cut
laptop,
the shot in half in little pieces and try to do jump cuts is basically my only option here because I don't have alternate angles. Notice, of course, while I'm doing this, I am able to use Q and W. I'm able to use add edit to all tracks and other things that would otherwise interfere with video track 1 and audio track 1. But because they're locked, it's not affecting them. And I used the lock feature a lot less before I got my AutoHotKey script to do it with a keyboard shortcut. One thing that's important to know is that I have composite preview during trim off. If I had it on, then you'd see more than one little view up there in the program monitor, and also Premiere would be potentially extremely slow because that feature is bugged right now.
Get a laptop, Razer's characteristically compact 165-watt power adapter. It really hasn't changed a lot since the original Razer Blade 14. Razer Blade 14, you get a laptop.
Some video editing is just going to be kind of tedious, where you look at the same shot and listen to the same words over and over again, trying to get the timing to work. You know, timing is really important. You can expand time, you can contract time. If you have only one shot, sometimes you've got to expand that out and make it last a lot longer, or you got to cut down one shot, or if you have a bunch of shots, sometimes you got to squish it all together or just don't use a lot of them.
165-watt power adapter and
So Linus has a list of words he likes to have censored on the channel. This one is included. It's kind of funny though, he didn't know I was going to make a tutorial out of this, so he used some strong language here to indicate that his strong language should be censored. Which it will be, but not before I censor it in this tutorial. So you'll see that. So one thing you might notice is that I actually drag from the little video icon down onto the timeline rather than using the insert and overwrite commands, which have keyboard shortcuts that are associated with them. And a lot of people will edit this way. It's called three-point editing. But I don't like doing it because Premiere does not have the features that I need, and the track targeting and the source patching are not nearly controllable enough for me to be able to use insert and overwrite effectively. The source patching always stays on the same track, and there are actually presets that you can use to move the source patching around, and I do, but there's no shortcut to disable only video source patching or only audio source patching. There's also no shortcut to just insert only video or only audio. Same with override. And when I drag it down from the source monitor, I can also see exactly how long the clip is going to be before I put it on the timeline. And it doesn't move the playhead when I drag it down.
In fact, not much.
There are shortcuts for track targeting, but they're all toggles, making them useless to me because there's no guarantee of if a track's going to be on or off because it's always based upon its last state.
5-watt power adapter and some papers.
Oh, so here what I'm doing is I am rescuing the audio.
And some papers to...
Sometimes your B-roll clips have audio associated with them. You can call that Foley. And if you forget to bring the audio out, all you gotta do is click on the clip and have the playhead over that clip, and then press, well, in my case, it's M for match frame, and then it'll appear in the source monitor, and then you can drag it from there back onto the timeline with the audio included. Now, I wish that Premiere had a shortcut where you could just click it and the audio would just appear, but of course, that feature does not exist.
About the earth and shit. In fact...
Okay, so you can see here that I'm using yet another AutoHotKey fancy pants script. It's called the instantsFX script, I guess. I have lots and lots of sound effects I can load this way, one of which is a beep for purposes of censoring audio. Basically what it does is there's a bin on my leftmost monitor that is dedicated just to the most common sound effects that I use, and that's a lot of whooshes. And the script will highlight that panel, because that's a shortcut in Premiere. Then it will highlight the find box. Then it'll type in a search query, and then using the caret, it will move the mouse down and onto the icon of the actual sound effect as it appears in the bin. Then it left clicks once to select that audio. And previously it had used a shortcut to load a source assignment preset. Yes, that's right, those exist. And those you can find here from the little wrench in the timeline if you want to make those, and you can assign shortcuts in the shortcut panel. And that puts the source patching onto audio track 3. And then it presses Control /, which I have set up to the command overwrite. Now you might be familiar with period as the shortcut for overwrite. However, sending keystrokes like that using AutoHotKey is dangerous because you might accidentally type something in somewhere. So it's best to use the control modifier to ensure that a keystroke is never accidentally inserted anywhere that you don't want it to be. More ideal would be to trigger the command directly, but I can't do that, so I have to use more obscure shortcuts that include a lot of modifier keys. And that's it. The sound effect should now have been inserted into the timeline, assuming that nothing has gone horribly wrong, which it often does, and I really need to do a lot more debugging on this particular script.
Earth and shit. Earth and shit. The earth and...
So anyway, now that I have that little beep noise, the easiest way I've found to censor swear words is to just put the beep directly on top of the audio itself, which is destructive, but it's intentionally destructive. And then you use the, what are these tools called? I don't remember because it's all muscle memory right now. It's the slide tool and also the rolling edit tool. Using both of those, you can very easily scooch around the position of the beep, thus covering it up exactly as much or as little as you desire. If you want to go less than 1 frame, you can also click the hamburger, the triple line thingy, and select Show Audio Time Units to get much smaller units and zoom in a lot further.
Earth and shit. Earth and shit. Earth and shit.
Or you can do it the quick and dirty way, which is to use a single frame cross dissolve, which is what I have done here.
Earth and shit. In fact, not much has changed outwardly.
I try to have just one tiny part of the word audible. So it looks like I don't actually have the footage for this shot, or at least it's not labeled, so I don't know where it is. So I'm just going to add a marker, and you can extend that marker either in the marker panel or by Alt left clicking and then dragging it. But the first time you try that, you can only Alt drag to the right, not the left, probably a bug. Keep in mind also that if you click on that marker accidentally, it'll move the playhead to the very beginning of the marker, which can be very annoying.
In fact, not much has changed outwardly about the machine either, aside from the textured LTT design by Ed, which you won't find on the one that you buy at the store anyway. It still rocks a
I wasted a few seconds here doing nothing important, so we're just going to skip that. So right here you see that I'm recoloring one of the shots. That's called a label color, and what's really, really, really annoying is that you can't find these very easily in the keyboard shortcuts panel. So I'm going to put up a little thing right here. I'm going to show you. Look, this is how you get to them. Oh, scratch that. In 2017.1, I believe, you actually can get to the label colors just by searching for the word label. So they did fix that, which is fantastic-rific.
Either, aside from the textured LTT design by Ed, which you won't find on the one that you buy at the store anyway.
So you can see here that the laptop actually does have a sticker on it, and the entire point of this joke was that you will not receive a dbrand skinned or a stickered laptop. So the B-roll shooter wasn't paying close enough attention to the script.
Buy at the store, the one that you buy at the store anyway. At the store anyway. It still rocks a normal,
So I like adding little sound effects to the B-roll. In this case, I tried to add a little beep to simulate Colton swearing. You can pretty much do that to any audio and it'll sound like a swear. But I think that later I decided it didn't sound like it was coming from Colton, so I end up cutting it back out. Our B-roll shooting has actually improved quite a bit. We now have meetings between the writer, whomever it might be, and the B-roll shooter. And they go over the script together, and they have a B-roll matrix, which is an even more information-rich method of writing down what shots you intend to get and not have to have the script there when you're actually shooting because you've already looked it over. And this has actually yielded much better results because the writer is making sure that the shooter is getting exactly what is necessary.
rocks a normal, non-magnetized power cord. Hint, hint, razor.
However, as you will see in this video tutorial, it has also led to problems where we don't have enough glam, if any glam, because everything about the product is something specific. However, lately, we've put an extra note in that says, make sure you get like 3 to 5 glam shots, and that's been working better. Oh, it looks like there's 2 takes in here. Here we've got ourselves an insane clown posse joke, which I know about insane clown posse just because of the how do magnets work meme.
Power cord.
So once again, censoring Linus.
Hint, hint, razor.
First I need to ensure that it's mono rather than weird stereo. I'm gonna go grab this little beep from over here. I would usually alt-click drag to duplicate.
Hint.
But I didn't need that there in the first place, so I can just grab the whole thing. Rough this in here.
Hint, razor. To go with it. Hint, hint, razor. To go with its.
Taran,
What?
are you familiar with just unfortunately?
Okay, so what happened here is, around this time, NVIDIA was forcing everyone to upgrade to GeForce Experience version 3, and it was still really buggy and annoying and requires a sign-in and junk, so I was just helping Brandon reset his back to version 2. These days, version 3 is adequate. So just spending some time there to help someone else, because I'm a nice guy. Bleh. So here you're going to see that I tried to get the Linus in B-roll talking at the same time as the Linus in A-roll, and I decide that's not working. You can't hear 2 people talking at the same time. So I'm scooching it over and then I'm messing with the timings. In the meantime, while you see this happening in the background, I'm going to talk about something completely different because this is boring.
Hint, razor.
Let's just talk about what not to do when you're editing a video. The #1 greatest problem I see on YouTube is sound effects and music being too loud relative to the dialogue. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the video What Exactly is 1 Second by James May on Head Squeeze, and just try to listen to what he's saying. The video is very professionally done otherwise, but the sound effects and music should have been lowered by like 12 decibels, maybe more. And this is just one of hundreds of thousands of possible examples. I know audio mixing is not always easy, but it is very important. Another amateur mistake that I see sometimes is having either no motion or no sound in the video at any particular moment. Having no motion at all is especially bad because how most video streaming sites work is they'll keep the audio playing even if the video is buffering too slowly. So if you want to use a freeze frame or something, you better make sure you know what you're doing, otherwise it'll look like a mistake. Also, even with a static image on screen, it's usually nice to have a bit of a zoom or a pan or something that keeps things more dynamic and interesting. After all, it's a video, not a slideshow, so you might as well play to the strengths of the medium. Okay, so once I have the timing of this magnets joke figured out, I'm gonna ask Brandon what the heck the next thing is on the script, because it doesn't make any sense to me. So you'll hear that conversation is starting now.
Brandon?
Yeah.
Brandon and Linus's planned shot with the clear things.
Okay, so...
Is that done?
Yes.
Okay. Is it
Now,
B-roll
it's
2?
not... Yes, so you scroll down. It's not an... So I did it 2 ways. You can do it... This is the, like, more standardized way.
Oh, the clear holders.
Yeah. So
okay,
what he was talking about was, like... So, yeah. So look at this. This is each side of the laptop's I/O.
This is the same laptop?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the blade. There's just 2 of them, so you
Yeah.
can see both at the same time.
Okay.
And so I just did a rack focus, or you could, like... Oh, that...
It's not racking to anything.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
from nothing to there.
Yeah. So no, that's the... I don't know. I did that as a safety, but, like, I think like, we talked about... So I had pitched him this idea of, like, having a light go across this way, having a light go across that way, but I didn't have hard enough lights because everyone else was using stuff, so I just did a, like, kind of light reveal.
Right.
You can use whichever you prefer. I did both to give you the option.
Yeah. Kind of hard to see.
You can bring up the
brighter.
a little bit.
Yeah, I think this one's more clear. Okay, thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.
Okay, so the keyboard visualizer is not perfect. If you look down in the bottom left here, you see that it's U, L button, I, L button, O, L button, and that's just because I'm holding down the left mouse button as I am hitting certain keys. So just, keep that in mind. That's what that meant. So anyway, I found the clip that Brandon was talking about because, well, he was there telling me what was going on. Looks like I just grabbed a dip to black straight out of the effects panel. I don't have a shortcut to apply the dip to black transition, and that is because you cannot save any of Premiere's standard transitions as a preset. And that is yet one more feature that I have been badgering them to please, please, please add in, but it's been a year or 2 by now. Interestingly enough, you can save transition presets if they are third-party transition presets. What you got to do is select it, go up to the hamburger on the effect controls, and say Save Preset. It works with all third-party presets, and interestingly enough, it also works with the dissolve transition, but that's all. And this will save all of the custom settings you've applied to that transition, as well as the duration if you desire. I have some AutoHotKey workarounds for applying transitions and fake saving transitions as like clipboard states, but it really is not very good. And I just wish they had the feature in the program for real. Anyway, so here we have the next shot. I wish that this shot was not done with a pink laptop up in the right, the upper right corner, because it kind of knocks off the sort of feng shui of the shot to have it so unbalanced towards that laptop. Like if that laptop was the point of the shot, then sure, yeah, totally, go for it. But in this case it wasn't. Oh. Well, Premiere crashed. There's a lot of things that waste my time when I'm trying to get a video done. Not having the footage being poorly organized, people being disruptive, but when Premiere is being buggy, you can lose hours and hours of time in a day. Oh, this is so funny. Okay, I'm looking through manually to find the latest saved version of the autosave. You can see that was 11:37, whereas this one was 11:45. That's the one I saved manually. So it looks like the autosave stopped working, which is so frustrating. And these days, I actually now have a script that will automatically find the latest saved file for me in any particular folder of any particular file type. However, I did not have that script when I recorded this video.
USB 3 ports, audio jack,
So I had to do it manually. Anyway, here's the next shot. Scrub through to find where the camera moves, plonk that on the timeline. Let's see how that works.
Thunderbolt 3 port and HDMI port, and like, it basically looks like the same damn computer. Still with the black.
And actually, if you look at the script, you see that he does specifically call out the fact that the computer is black. So using the pink laptop, not the best choice there. But this next shot is really nice. Still with the rubber feet. Excellent move there. Okay, so what happens sometimes is Brandon will do a move, and then he'll be like, I messed up that move. Let's do it again. And here we see that that's the actual move that he probably wanted me to use. Because for that one...
Still with the rubber feet.
For that one, he held the shot.
Still with the rubber feet. Still...
It starts about here. So he went, okay, going to the rubber feet, going to the rubber feet, and holding the shot. But I decided, you know what? His little, oh crap, I'm going to abort this shot move actually looks really good, even though it was an accident, because I think it'll make a good lead-in to the next shot. So let's go see what the next shot is, because Linus is talking so quickly here that the B-roll needs to kind of keep up with him. So the fact that there's actually a pan back out of that shot might work to my advantage. So let's see here. So he goes down and then back up again. So I'm thinking I could do a match cut right here. So I'm just lining it up. You can see that I've got snapping enabled, which kind of screws with your ability to move stuff around. But you can turn it on and off with a keyboard shortcut. Mine is N.
Still with the dime thickness.
But look at that.
The dime.
Match cut. Okay, that's not quite a match cut. What kind of a cut is that? I don't know, but it kind of messes with 3D space because it's like you pan up and there's another table and another laptop. Whereas if you're trying to maintain the audience's sense of spatial relations, you wouldn't do it this way. Another way that I could have done that would be with a top to bottom wipe. However, the wipe would probably need to be a feathered wipe rather than a hard line. Anyway, moving on to the next shot. I thought that last one was pretty successful.
With the bright green Razer logo on the back.
What? Hang on just a moment. One moment.
Okay, so what happened here is that Pella, one of our new editors, called me away to help him with something to do with aspect ratio problems. I don't mind helping other people with stuff like that because it means ultimately less work and frustration for everybody. Now let's get back to the edit. So what I had done there just before I got called away was I went over to my various assets sequence and I copied a adjustment layer that has embedded inside of it the impact flash transition. And here I'm just loading in some sound effects as I've explained before.
Logo on the back that causes gamers to rush
the reason why I used a adjustment layer for that transition is because if you do it that way, you can get away with putting this transition across two clips that are not butted up against each other on the same layer. And it doesn't work for every transition. But as you can see, it works perfectly well for this one. So in this case, the adjustment layer is basically just kind of an invisible layer, and yet everything on it will affect everything below it.
With the bright green Razer logo on the back that causes gamers to rush the stands and professionals to refuse to go into meetings with their laptops because they're too embarrassed. Even most of the key specs are the same.
Okay, so right now I'm going to go and search for a crowd cheering sound effect, but that's a little boring. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about something completely different because otherwise we're going to have dead air. So there's this concept called a Lord Privy seal, or B-roll rebus, where basically the editor has put on screen the literal noun of whatever the presenter is talking about.
With Mr. Wilson were Mr. Douglas Houghton, the Minister without portfolio, and Lord Longford, the Lord Privy Seal.
The problem with Lord Privy Seals is that they contain no informational value. They can be funny, and that's a good reason to use them. But like anything, there's a time and a place for these. And I really don't like using them, and I think that there's almost always a better option out there. Now, you might not have access, or you might not have the rights to certain photographs, or videos, or pieces of music, or whatever else. And perhaps there really is nothing that you can show aside from a talking head and a bunch of Lord Privy Seals. But at that point, I just have to say, well, why are you making this a video? If you really have nothing to show, you should just be writing an article. Anyway, what am I doing here? It looks like I was just searching for some other sound effects to put in. LOL crowd audio? Did I really call it that? Something that I try to avoid is using sound effects that everyone has already heard a million times, like this one. See what I mean? I only use those ironically. Anyway, I'm finding a nice crowd noise. I'm trying to find a crowd noise that will represent a bunch of fanboys crowding the stage trying to get free stuff. And I guess I went with this one. And oh, here's a fun trick. So Linus gave me this photo. And, frickin' non-editors, man, they don't understand that you need the highest resolution possible of whatever in order to work. So I'm just doing a reverse image search for this thing, and then you click on more sizes, and it will sort them by the largest first. So I'm grabbing this from whomever it is that uploaded it. Now, sometimes you get images that say that they are a high resolution, but really somebody just scaled up a low-res image to a larger file size, and it's all blurry and crappy. But in this case, I think the resolution actually looks pretty much the same. It might be, yeah, it's maybe marginally better. Anyway, apparently, I think this photo was taken by Razer themselves, so I did grab it from some random website, but the actual photographer was one of theirs, and they told us that we could use it, and so we are using it. So this just goes in with a joke about...
On the back.
Actually, I'm not sure. We'll have to read the script. So here I am just putting on some scale keyframes. You have to untwirl that little triangle menu in order to get to the...
On the back that causes gamers to...
Easing properties.
On the back that causes...
And that's what this is. If you don't... Why am I explaining this? You should already know that. What is this? What is this, a diaper show? Is this amateur hour over here? But the reverse image search, not everybody knows about that, so...
Gamers to rush the stands and...
There you go. That's a kind of a dramatic zoom out. I like that effect. I think I learned that from watching cartoons.
This is gamers to rush the stands. causes game
Just reusing one of the whoosh noises here.
causes gamers to rush the stands and professionals to
Looks like I decided not to use it. Oh, one thing that's very, very, very important is I don't delete clips off the timeline if I don't have to. I will disable them on the timeline instead. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet. No, I haven't, but I'm telling you now. So the default shortcut for that is Shift-E, and I have never needed to change that shortcut. It's pretty easy to do. It's right on your left hand, so I've kept it exactly that way, and I use it all the time. All the time. The only thing that you have to watch out for is that even a disabled clip will still invisibly kind of get in your way. So if you're somewhere and you double click on the program monitor, it will still highlight the disabled clip instead of the clip underneath it that's not disabled. And that's really annoying. It's one of my 200 problems with Premiere that I have a big old spreadsheet of. Have I mentioned that yet? I put it in my Premiere Pro Problems playlist. It's not fixed yet.
refuse to go into meetings with their laptops because they're too embarrassed. Professional stands and
But my priorities are clearly different from Adobe's priorities.
professionals to refuse to go into meetings with their laptops.
Adobe has fixed several of the bugs and put in some of the features that I've suggested. And as much as I don't like to admit it, the best way to get stuff fixed in Premiere is to just use the wish form. Google it and you'll find it. So anyway, moving on here, we've got... This is ridiculous. We've got this Fako business meeting with Linus.
Because they're too embarrassed.
Being ashamed of his laptop, so he left it outside, and it's sad about that.
Refuse to go into meetings with their laptops because they're
too embarrassed. Yes, very funny. Okay, and then you see the close-up shot that it is supposed to cut to according to the guidance in the script. Now, I'm thinking this is pretty funny. I want to add some music to this, but actually not a music. It's an orchestral hit. Oh, hang on. Looks like I'm accidentally click-dragging this. Stop it. Okay. It's an orchestral hit. And I was just perusing the Warner Chappell library. That's our music library that we pay for. And I stumbled upon these, and I thought they were so great. I thought they were so funny that I just listen. But there's so many of these in this folder that I'm trying to find some method of viewing waveforms in either Premiere or in Explorer or somehow as they are in an icon view. So I'm searching around. I do this for a minute or two. I'm Googling a whole bunch, and I never find an answer. It looks like there's like a third-party application that you can download, but I don't want to have to do that. So eventually I figure out that it's not going to happen today. But I still took the time to try to figure it out, because basically every day I'll learn one new thing. And sometimes it turns out to not work, and sometimes it does work, and eventually you know a lot of things. So right here, you can see we do in fact have the waveforms visible in Warner Chappell's music library itself. Okay, so from my laugh there, it sounds like I've found the one that I wanted. See, there's so many of them that I didn't know which ones were the short ones. Ah, there it is. Excellent. Okay, a lot of time wasted to find that one hit, but again, I was trying to learn a few new skills. Failed, but could have turned out to be something.
Meetings with their laptops.
By the way, you see me sort of stair-stepping, as I call it, all of the clips on the timeline. The reason I do that is to maintain where I know the in-out points are for any clip of usable material. This way it's non-destructive. Okay, so you saw me reduce the gain of this clip by 16 decibels. Now I'm just making sure both audio tracks are on left, and I also pin tooled it down at the beginning because it's extra super loud. Sound effects, like I said, you gotta be real careful. Don't make them too loud. Okay, now before I begin animating this, that bin of orchestral hits is totally in the way. I'm gonna put it back where it belongs. Okay, so I've got two shots here, one on the left and one on the right. I'm supposed to make them match up. They're supposed to be played in sequence. Now, here's the thing. I actually waffle about with this for quite a while. I try all sorts of different things to make this work, and I'm just trying to do it because I read the script and I read the shot guidance, and this is what I was told to do. However, the problem is that this wasn't shot in a way that is conducive to doing that. As you can see, the bottom of the window is cutting off the bottom of the laptop in the first shot, but not in the second shot. So I waffle around with this for quite a long time, and I'm going to fast forward through some of that, but I'm also going to talk about a concept called killing your darlings, which is very important for an editor, by the way. First off, notice that I've already pretty much got the shot working. Watch this.
Because they're too embarrassed. Even most of the key specs are the same.
And then it pointlessly cuts to the second shot. Again, I don't need to use that shot, and I spend way too long trying to make it work. Killing your darlings is a concept where, let's say that a movie studio you work for has gone and they've spent like a week getting some really nice shots. There are these crane shots of a city, there's this whole scene, there's this, I don't know, choreographed dance. It costs lots of money. But let's say that the movie isn't even a musical, and such a scene would be tremendously out of place in this movie, and not in a good way. The correct answer in this case is to cut that scene. Do not use it. And you might get tremendous blowback from the people who worked really hard on that scene, but if it doesn't work in the movie, it shouldn't go in the movie. And there have been times where I have deliberately not used a very nice shot or shots that Brandon has gotten because they simply do not work. I do have one example off the top of my head. There was this video, what was it called? Project Backpack. Okay, so this was a sponsored piece. Brandon and Linus spent all night filming all sorts of stuff, and they filmed all of these really nice shots of painting the wall. There was like, I don't know, 30% of the shots were painting the wall. And in the final edit, I used 4 of those shots. 4. Because once you know he's painting the wall, you don't need to keep seeing it, right? So I did not use the footage in proportion to how it had been shot. When you're in the editing room, it becomes very obvious what is needed and what is not. And on the flip side, I was annoyed that they did not get enough footage of Linus playing various different games. I only have footage of like 3 games, and I needed 4 or 5. So I had to move other things around to kind of compensate for that. Something else that I see a lot of is if you're editing a multi-camera shoot, there is always the temptation to keep cutting to a different camera just because you have so many cameras. You might as well use them, right? No! You might as well only use them when absolutely necessary. Every cut must be done with purpose. And if it's better to hold on the wide, then hold on the wide. Okay, so 10 wasted minutes later, you can see the fruit of my labors. You can see this, shot being matched up here, and it just doesn't look good. So after I deleted all the stuff that didn't work, here's what the shot finally ended up looking like.
To refuse to go into meetings with their laptops because they're too embarrassed. Even most of the keys.
The fact that it's a little bit blurry is actually kind of funny. I don't know, it's the sort of crudity of it is amusing. Okie dokie. Next shot here. Looks like we've got shot 70, and I'm supposed to label it with stuff. Okay. That's a unique shot. Does he do it again? No. Oh, what? I don't know what his hands are doing. Is he pointing to stuff? I don't think I ended up using that. This shot is really long, like really long. Am I supposed to cut it up? I don't understand. Sometimes I just don't know what the original intent of a shot is. If Brandon was around at this point, I could have asked him, but he wasn't anywhere to be found. Unfortunately, sometimes they shoot for something different from what ends up being in the script, so sometimes I get shots that don't even work anymore because the plan has changed. So this may have been in the script at some point, but it isn't now. And right here I'm looking back through the B-roll bin, maybe looking for an alternative take, but I don't find it, so this is the only take that I have. Yeah, like look at all this. What is he doing? What's he gesturing to? Am I supposed to label stuff as he's gesturing to it? Because there's not enough time at all. And if you look at the script, it doesn't mention anything about hands pointing to things.
The maximum NVMe SSD size got doubled to 1 terabyte, and the GTX 970M from last gen has been
Okay,
bumped
here we
to a
can see that the
GTX
next shot is
1060, which means the
71,
newest-
so let's go just find that. And I guess I found it already. This is just static, it's not moving at all, which is kind of annoying. I prefer shots to have a bit of motion in them, but maybe I'll add some motion to it later.
Same. Battery, same. Though, the maximum NVMe SSD size got doubled to 1 terabyte, and the GTX 970.
Okay, back to the script. We've got shot 71 and 72 coming up here. I don't know why the cursor becomes invisible sometimes. This is OBS. XSplit is pretty good keeping it visible, but OBS and Shadowplay will make the cursor invisible sometimes on pure white. I don't get it. I don't know. So that's 72. Next shot, 89. Lol. It says use the best take. Sometimes there's little notes, obviously. Yeah, it's pretty good. Just messing around. Focus is changing from the laptop to him. Yeah. It's a good shot. Plop that in there.
Means the newest blade is a very capable little VR machine, and that both the Thunderbolt and
This is the ideal kind of B-roll
HDMI port
to show for a point in the script like that. Okay, next one. Shot 91. Plug 2 displays into the blade. There it is. Found it already. Fantastic. Okay. Plugs into displays. Looks through here. Okay, now, here's the trouble with doing all the actions in one shot. Lack of coverage. This shot has him plugging in one monitor, and then another monitor, then he goes around to the other side. It's a oneer. And the trouble with doing it that way is that your timing has to be perfect so that the actions will match up with the narration. Also, I'm pretty sure that he's plugging in the cables in the wrong order from what he says in the script. So they probably didn't have the script with them when they shot this, which is why they got the order wrong. Let's see what he says here.
And that both the Thunderbolt,
and then HDMI. Yeah, they did it the wrong way. So I got to do HDMI. And then the trouble is the camera's
and
moving
HDMI
around,
port
so
can
I
handle
can't
4
hold that shot for as long as I need it.
Thunderbolt and HDMI port can handle.
And then I can swap over to the other thing. Yeah. Ugh. I want us to be able to be creative like this. This is more interesting.
4K 60 hertz can handle 4K 60 hertz now.
More recently, everyone's been paying a lot more attention to stuff like this, where if we have a shot like this, we call it a choreographed shot, and someone does, in fact, read through the script as they're
4K
acting it out.
Can handle 4K 60 hertz now.
So you see I used an impact push there. Once again, these are transitions that you can get from filmimpact.net. They're fantastic. They're free for the first pack. I bought all the other packs, but unfortunately, We would also have to buy them for every single other editor just in case you open up a project on someone else's computer. Anyway, it looks like I'm experimenting with this flip over transition, and I've never tried to use it before, and boy, I will never try to use it again because this looks awful. Let's see if I can change the background color here to something that's not gray. Why would you choose gray as the default? Okay, so that didn't work. So many of the transitions you get in Premiere are just completely cheesy nonsense that looks like it came straight out of the 80s. So, oh. Yeah, well, Premiere crashed. This is unfortunately a very common sight. Premiere crashes at least once a day for me, usually more. And if you edit in Premiere, you're going to get real friendly with the autosave function. And if I haven't told you already, your autosave function needs to be set to something hardcore, like every 3 minutes with 70 versions. Every 2 minutes is too often. But even set to every 3 minutes, it doesn't even save every 3 minutes. That's just like a suggestion to it. So I'm going to make an AutoHotKey script that just presses Control S for me every now and then. I'm sick of losing projects like that. Okay, well, let's open this back up again. It looks like this time it made a potential recovery project. It does that on occasion. I'd say that I encounter the automatic recovery project save thingy maybe like 5% of the time it crashes. So you've got to be reliant upon your own saving and auto-saving. Now sometimes you load these and it crashes immediately after you open them. So let's just see if this works. Whenever you're loading an autosave or a recovery project, never save over your current project. Always call it V2 or something, because it might be in a broken state. What did I just say? What did I just say? It crashed as soon as I opened it. If I'd overwritten my previous project file, I might have a completely unusable project file, and that has happened before. And the only way that I have been able to continue working was to load an autosave. And that's what I have to do here. So let's see if this first one is going to work. And if not, I'll have to go to the one before this, or the one before that, or the one before that. So let's see. You know, you don't want to lose work. So you try to load the most recent one. Okay, let's see. Okay, still gray background. Let's delete that transition as quickly as we can. Sometimes if you delete something before it loads, it won't crash.
4K,
Because,
60 hertz now.
well, because
Note that a
Premiere.
1060 will run most games
So
at 4K
let's go back to
60
the
frames per
good
second
old
anyway,
impact
which
push,
is where my
because we know that that works. Oh, something that you'll see me do sometimes is hit Control S and then immediately go into Word. And as with all of my little tricks, it's just another method of saving time. Premiere will save in the background while I do other things.
anyway, which is where my which is where my favorite difference from the last gen comes in. The blade is now available with a glass-topped 3200 by 1800 touchscreen or a matte 1920 by 1080 non-touchscreen that's cheaper, saves a little battery, avoids any issues with poor resolution scaling in Windows, and translates to up to double the frame rate in games. Now, obviously, you can turn down the touchscreen model to 1080p, but then you're dealing with interpolation instead of a crisp native resolution image.
Okay, let's look at the script here. Two models side by side, launching a game. Oh, I see. It's showing that one of them is a touchscreen and the other isn't. And the frame rate difference.
This is the 1800p model.
Okay, it's very convenient when
The 1800p model.
B-roll has talking in it that explains what's going on. Because, like, I wouldn't know. Because it's such a extreme close-up.
Which is where my favorite difference from the last gen comes in.
So, thank you, Linus.
The blade is now available with a glass-topped 3200 by 1800 touchscreen or a matte 1920 by 1080 non-touch screen that's cheaper, saves a little battery, avoids any issues with poor resolution scaling in Windows, and translates to up to double the frame rate in games. Now, obviously, you can turn down the touchscreen model to 1080p, but then you're dealing with interpolation.
Okay, that's obviously the wrong spot for that B-roll to be on, but I'm just consulting the script here again to see what the next shot is, and I click back into Premiere, and oh no! I accidentally took it out of full screen mode and into windowed mode, which, because I have 4 monitors and some of them have different UI scaling, Premiere can get really confused. And this is a bug that I don't really hold against them because UI scaling in Windows is not great. So anyway, let's continue here and fix our little toolbar there. I also decide that I might as well save a V3. I don't know, I get nervous when Premiere is acting strangely, and I prefer to ensure that I have lots of project files to fall back on if things go wrong.
The blade is now available with a glass-topped 3200 by 1800 touchscreen or a matte 1920 by 1080 non-touchscreen. That's cheaper, safe,
Little battery.
Okay, so right here I'm going to do a split screen of the matte screen versus the touch screen model for this laptop, showing that the frame rate is different depending upon which model you have. However, this is kind of boring because I'm just moving footage around and scaling it and using the crop effect and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to take this time to talk about something a little bit different. Obviously, Premiere just crashed and I had to recover from that. Now, Edsel and Pella do not use a template when they begin editing a new video. Instead, they just start off completely fresh. They open Premiere, they say new project, and they go from there. They import all of their assets and so on. The reason why they do this is because they claim it leads to fewer stability problems. Right, so Premiere crashing less often, freezing less often, not giving GPU render errors as often. Now, there's probably some truth to that, but it also means more busy work. Now, if you don't understand, what I mean by a template is basically I just create a new Premiere project. I import everything that I think I'll need for editing. I will put all sorts of titles in there. I'll put all sorts of sound effects in there. I'll organize it really cleanly. I'll make sure my sequence is absolutely perfect. And then I save that. And then I will use that from then on for every single project that I use. So it's just a pre-saved sort of jumping off point. And sometimes I'll open it back up again and make some changes and save it again. And then that'll be my new template. I've done this like 25 times. Now, I think that using a template is a good idea, but it is entirely possible that it leads to more bugs and instability. So it's totally up to you if you decide if you do or do not want to work with a pre-saved project as a starting off point. What I will do is, with each new version of Premiere that is released by Adobe, I will create a brand new template from scratch without converting it from one version to another. And I'll re-import everything, I'll reorganize everything, I'll save it, and then that'll be my brand new template. So that's my current solution. Okay, so a weird thing about this is I thought that to change resolution, you actually have to do it through Windows. There's a little menu, of course, where you can do that. However, it looks like in this shot, he's just changing the resolution of the game itself. And I'm not sure if that counts. So in a situation like this, basically the shooter, in this case Brandon, has made an educated guess as to what Linus's intent is. Although actually I think that's Linus on the computer. Yeah, that's Linus. You can see his watch. So this is probably the correct shot. But it has been the case where the shooter has made an educated guess that turned out to be completely wrong. Where it makes sense that you would arrive at that conclusion, but it's just completely wrong. And as an editor, I used to make some of those educated guesses as well, but as time has gone on and I've been proven wrong in my guesses over and over again, I now am a lot more cautious to make an assumption. And sometimes it's not even an assumption. For example, I was editing a video where Linus talks about the Logitech G15 and how it was the first keyboard with 18 macro keys on it. So I Google around and I find the Logitech G15 keyboard with 6 macro keys on it. But I see that there's other keys directly above, M1, M2, M3. So I think, oh, he must have meant that you can have a total of 18 possible macro keys, even if they're not all physical macro keys. Well, I was wrong. there's another Logitech G15 keyboard that does have 18 physical macro keys. So I made an assumption based upon the name of the keyboard that turned out to be wrong. It is so easy to miscommunicate in pretty much any situation. And I'm infamous around here, I guess, for being absurdly robotic in the way that I process information and communicate, where I insist upon absolute, perfect transmission of knowledge where there's no room for interpretation and misunderstanding. And I believe it was actually me who insisted upon guidance in the scripts, where there's comments that explain, here's what this is supposed to be, here's what that's supposed to be, here's a link to this thing, because we weren't really doing that before I came around. And here you see that I'm attempting to search my script for the word graph, but it's showing results from the comments, and then it gets to the bottom, and then it tries to go back to the top, and you have to be specific if you want to search up or down. But anyway, I found it myself. I really hate the way that word search works. I wish that it was pretty much the same as hitting Control F on a web page. That works a lot better. Anyway, back to what I was saying before. We now have it as a part of our review process to have the original author of a script review the video before it goes up. Because, you know, there's so many little details that it's easy to get wrong. And the editor wouldn't even know because they don't know. Okay, so, oh dear. I'm seeing a lot of graphs, and they're only kind of labeled in a way that makes sense. Sometimes I've put the graphs in the wrong locations, but even if it says CPU and GPU temperatures, there might be more than one graph of CPU and GPU temperatures. And in this case, there were 4 different potential graphs that I could have put here, so I don't know what to do. The benchmarking graphs are probably these ones, but I just don't know. So I'll put a marker down on the timeline. See here, I'm doing it. Which tells me to ask Linus about what the heck goes here. And if you'll notice, I created that orange marker instantaneously because I have some fancy pants AutoHotKey shortcuts on my secondary keyboard where I press Shift numpad 3 and it'll actually make an orange marker straight up. So any orange marker is ask Linus a question. So I will go through the whole edit all the way to the end, and then I'll go find Linus and I'll ask him all of the orange markers questions, because orange is kind of Linus's color. And that way I don't continuously disturb him throughout the day with all my little questions. I can just get them all over with all at once. And again, you can use Alt and click drag on a marker to expand it, like so, which can be very valuable because you can time things out even if you don't already have them. But you can only Alt click drag to expand the marker forwards at least the first time you do it. So this is a really long shot, but fortunately, because the camera is not moving, I can very easily cut out the nothingness where it is waiting to boot up. Now this is somewhat disingenuous because it makes it seem as though this process is faster than it really is, because it's not obvious that time has been skipped here. However, it doesn't really matter because we did a review on the Razer Core where we do talk about how it works. And this video is literally just talking about this in passing. So in this case, maintaining absolute accuracy is not necessary.
Razer Core upgrade would boost performance as well, but that thing's like $500 plus a video card.
I used the rate stretch tool to make that footage go just a little bit faster, and I do that a lot, and it's really, really valuable. That's called speed ramping, if you don't know. And there are tools for doing it inside of a clip without having to cut it, and that's called time remapping. But it is limited to like 1,000 or 2,000% speed, which is not nearly enough. And it's also just a pain in the ass to set the whole thing up in the first place, so screw it. I just use cuts and the rate stretch tool. And the rate stretch tool is great because you can go to the clip menu. For me, it's Control R to change the speed there. But if you want to get something very precisely from here to there, rate stretch tool. You just choose the beginning and the end, and then you size it down to the amount of time that you need to take, and there it is.
On what is purportedly a gaming notebook. With that said, the webcam is still pretty good, even though it hasn't improved much, if at all. The trackpad took a major leap forward in responsiveness and... With that said, the webcam is still pretty good, even if it hasn't improved much, if at all.
So for this section, the intent is that I cut away the original A-roll and replace it with this webcam clip.
Even if it hasn't improved much, if at all.
And you wouldn't know that just looking at the guidance in the script, but because I've been working here, and I already know that this is how he likes to do it, I knew to do it that way. So here you see that I've decided the whole thing is a bit too quiet. I increased the gain by 7 decibels, quite a bit. It's tough getting these audio levels just right.
Thankfully bears no resemblance whatsoever to the one in the higher end.
It takes 1 second for the audio gain panel to appear. And then it takes another second or 2 or 3 or more for the audio gain to actually be adjusted. The second part I can understand, but opening a panel should not take 1 second. Which is weird because using the brackets to adjust audio gain on clips is instantaneous and requires no loading of any panels or anything. So sometimes I'll just do that rather than dealing with the nonsense of the audio gain panel. Okay, let's see here. What shot do I need next? Decibel meter shot of blade 14 in conference room is done. 0084. Where is it? Ah. Okay, this is the noise test, and the microphone, fuzzy, is black, and so is the laptop. And then the device itself is white, and so is the background. So it it blends together perfectly. It should really be the opposite way. You know, have the black on top of something that's white, and have the white of the device on top of something that's black. Now, it's easy to armchair philosophize about what should have been done. I actually talked to Brandon about this one, and he told me, yes, he knows it's not great. Yes, he knows not to do that. But for one, he was on a very tight deadline because somebody needed that laptop to do some more tests. And 2, it was actually quite messy in that room, so there was hardly anywhere to put the camera, the laptop, and the audio thingy. So I always insist that we shoot B-roll with the camera's internal mic always rolling. And that's because the environment is sometimes going to have some important audio in it, and especially in this case.
While gaming, they are loud when you're pushing them.
Okay, fun fact, monoMaker fails right here because there was a tooltip in the way of the OK button, and the script works by looking for the very specific color to know that the panel has loaded, because the panel takes an eternity to load.
Lag on the mere 60 hertz.
Okay, yeah, so you can hear the fan spinning just a bit there. So because the shot is about how noisy the laptop can be, obviously you want to hear that. Show what the host is talking about. Golden rule. Okay, really quick there, you saw that I pressed a key on my secondary keyboard, which automatically opened up an Explorer location, which in this case is the Newton server. That's our archive server that's got so many terabytes. And then I typed in Alien or whatever, and I immediately went to the video that I was looking for. Then I open up the delivery folder and I see that we have some unnecessary old exports for this video, so I delete those right away because we don't need them. We just need the latest and greatest one. So this is a cineform export, which of course means that I can scrub through its timeline really, really quickly. And I'm doing all of this in the first place because the script calls for reusing a shot from the Alienware 13 video. Now, I don't think that I edited this video, so I'm unfamiliar with it, and so I have to scrub through here. Notice how amazingly quickly I can do that. Oh my gosh. If this was H.264 MP4, this would be tremendously slow. So we're looking for something to do with input lag. that's a ugly graphic. Oh, that's what I'm supposed to use. Okay. If I recall correctly, I ended up fixing this image.
Look at the difference in mouse movement to screen movement response time here. The Blade 14 at about 40 milliseconds at 60 Hz is far from the worst I've seen, but the Alienware 13 is right down around 25 milliseconds, a full screen refresh faster, which only accounts for faster processing time. The pixel response times contribute equally to the perceived clarity and responsiveness of the display, because they keep the image looking crisp, even during fast camera pans.
Okay, let's put that clip down there. Let's recolor it.
Display with no G-sync, the input lag on the mere 60 hard, and the...
Okay, now usually I keep my staircase
Input
intact so I know how long each clip potentially has where I can shift it around. But in this case, I'll need to cut that audio directly when you stop seeing it so that we don't have fan noise where it does not belong.
With no G-sync is far from the best I've seen on what is purportedly...
Okay, now these two notebooks look pretty similar, so I need to label which is which. I mean, if you're paying attention, you'll know that the one with the pink trackpad is Linus's Blade, but let's not tempt fate here. So here I am just using the Premiere titler to fix up this graphic, just make it clear which is which. And I'm going to put a border somewhere in there. The titler is, it's pretty okay. It crashes a lot now, which sucks, but you can make some nice things. I just kind of improved this. I could also change the background color if I really wanted to, but I thought it was okay. So I could totally Photoshop that and probably make it look more pretty, but the titler is quick and dirty, and for the purposes here, it worked perfectly.
With that said, the webcam is still pretty good, even if it hasn't improved much, if at all.
Now I need to affect the A-roll layer, so I use my script that removes the locks.
What is purportedly a gaming notebook.
With that said, the webcam is still pretty good, even if it hasn't improved much.
Webcam shot, yeah, I did that, okay. Let's scroll down here to the next thing. Using trackpad, done. Oh, the done must mean that he got that shot, but it doesn't say which shot it is. I'll have to go find it. Okay, reuse side-by-side shot from Razer, whatever. So again, there's that shortcut to go into, in this case, the normal server, the Wanix server, and type in a couple letters to automatically go to the folder that I want without having to do a search, because searching on the server is horribly slow. Our server is not Windows-based. It's something else, like ButterFS, I want to say? Is that right? Well, I don't really know, but Linus built all of our servers himself, and he tells me that there's no possible way to get that search working faster. So fortunately, though, if you know the first letter of what you're looking for, you can just type it in Explorer, and it'll go straight there.
I mean, you post stuff to CES. Yes, content didn't play like that. Yeah, you filmed that last night. I was here when you filmed that. Yeah.
Okay, so on the mic, you've heard conversations between me and Brandon, and you can currently hear a conversation between Colton and Pella in the editing room. It's an important conversation, but those can still be quite distracting to anyone who is not involved. It's like this. When you record a video, it's very important to have complete control over the lighting and the noise on set. You can't have people turning lights on or off, or casting shadows, or reflections into your shot, or making any kind of noise while the camera is rolling. Similarly, it is also very important to have that kind of noise isolation while editing the video. It is simply not possible to balance audio levels of dialogue, sound effects, and music in a video if you are editing that video in a noisy environment. Particularly, if that includes people talking, it can become very difficult to distinguish the talking in the video from the talking in the room. Therefore, because we have up to 6 editors in the same room, we all just have to be courteous to one another by keeping our conversations quiet and short. So, that's one solution. Another solution is for the editor to turn up their computer volume, but anything above 85 decibels can cause hearing loss, so I don't like to do that. Another solution is noise-canceling headphones, but those can't block out all the noise, and they don't always really work that well. You can also try a really good pair of IEMs, in-ear monitors. Now, my favorite solution is the Hollywood solution, which is to simply have a dedicated, soundproof video editing suite for each editor, with a door that can be left open or closed. We did consider this, but it was deemed too expensive and would have taken up twice the floor space of the current editing room. So just make sure that you consider the importance of audio isolation in your own work environment.
And the keyboard thankfully bears no resemblance whatsoever to the one in the higher-end Blade Pro.
So fortunately, I had already made this little graphic and sort of animation for the Razer Blade Pro video, so I was able to reuse that for this video. That's convenient. And here, as usual, before I switched to Word, I just pressed Ctrl-S to save Premiere in the background. You know what? I don't think that works very well anymore. Premiere can sometimes really hog resources. So, looking at the script, quick zoom in, F and Roman, I like them. Okay. There is not a quick zoom in shot. This shot does not exist. Now, this is 4K footage, so I could zoom in on it, but it's not as close as it needs to be. And because the keyboard is quite dark, yeah, I really can't zoom in on that. So I tell Brandon that he needs to get this as a pickup shot. And then we both forgot and did not get the shot. Here I am making the point that I'm unable to continue slipping this clip because arbitrarily the end of the clip happens to be over there. Even though the part of the clip that I want is further down the line, I have to go and move the end of the clip before I can actually slip the clip, as I would like to. People disagree with me on this feature request, but I feel very strongly about it, since it would only be an optional change. So this is just a thing that I do. When I find a bug or I find a feature that I would like, I will take a short, maybe 1 or 2 minute long clip of what's going on, and then I'll make notes to myself in Notepad++, and eventually I'll just send those all over to Adobe or put it in a big old video. So for the vast majority of my bug reports, I have used Shadowplay's instant replay function, where I hit Alt F10 and it retroactively saves the last X number of minutes of what has happened on screen with audio. And as you might imagine, that's incredibly valuable for capturing bugs, especially the ones that happen once in a blue moon. Then you can go back and look at all the footage and see exactly the context that led up to that bug. Also, I have done experiments on whether or not having that instant replay function going all the time actually affects stability of Premiere and of the system, and I don't think that it does, because Shadowplay is all done entirely on the GPU. So that's just great. You do have to have the right NVIDIA GPU for that, however. Oh, there's one more AutoHotKey script that I have not actually mentioned yet, one that I use in every single application, and I didn't even program this one. It is the accelerated scrolling by Buffinbrain script, which basically just adds additional scroll up and scroll down events to your scroll wheel the more you scroll it. And it's been absolutely essential for me because scrolling through Premiere's timeline has always been incredibly, tremendously slow. I made a whole video dedicated to this script, so go watch that if you want this for yourself.
It's one of my favorite laptops.
So I'm just looking for a shot here. What shot am I looking for? Here's just a shot of Linus typing on this laptop. I think I'm considering it for like being reversed, so I'm playing it backwards, and I think, no, that's gonna look stupid. Sometimes you can reverse a B-roll shot and it looks totally fine. But in this case, I'm just trying to get the shot of Linus having to look really closely at his keyboard to try to find out the secondary functions of the
Pro.
function keys.
It's one of my favorite laptop keyboards ever.
By the way, just because this is a tutorial, sometimes I will lower the volume of what's going on the computer just so that you can hear me narrating over top of it. And when I stop talking, I'm going to increase the volume of the stuff going on the computer like so.
Born from a desire for RGB backlighting, and one that bothers me.
I'm just letting you know so that you don't get confused with the audio changing all the time.
So on the surface,
One more thing that you'll see I do in order to move through the timeline is zooming in and out rapidly. That'll do it. And also pausing and then playing the video if the timeline playhead has already scrolled off the edge. You can tell Premiere to do scrolling the timeline along with the playhead. I cannot stand that. It's horrible. Thank you, Premiere devs, for giving us the option to not have that happen.
And one that bothers me pretty much every day. So on the surface then,
you probably heard that little audio pop in your left ear if you're wearing headphones. These little pops happen from time to time in playback in Premiere. I used to rewind and watch again to make sure that the little pops weren't happening for real in the actual audio. They're not.
So on the surface then.
But, you know, you need to check sometimes just to make sure. No, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. I was just fiddling about with transitions. If you move a clip with a transition on it directly onto another clip, it will not necessarily merge that transition appropriately. You have to delete the transition and put it back on so that both clips will share it. So sometimes your transitions can get messed up if you're not paying close enough attention.
So on the surface then, not a lot has changed, even going back a few generations. But when you look closelier, Razer has been absolutely...
Okay, quickly recoloring that shot, saving, and going straight out to Firefox. I'm just going to Google look closelier, because I'm not sure if Linus is referring to some kind of meme or something specific, because obviously that's not proper grammar, and I'm not finding anything specific. So there is this sort of meme of a guy peering very closely at a book that I have seen, and I don't remember what it's called. So I just typed in a description of what I was looking for, and I didn't find it, but I do know that it happens to be in this video. Aha, there it is. Found it. Okay, so this is really stupid. I'm going to screenshot this image from this video and then do a reverse image search in order to find that particular painting. Hey, if it works, right? Okay, so I find the guy, and this is really fast forwarded because this is a photoshopping adventure, and this is not a Photoshop tutorial. So I'm just gonna fast forward through this. I grab a frame from Shutterstock, I grab a art gallery from Shutterstock as well, and I get rid of a frame and I put this guy into the frame and it looks pretty legit. I even add a drop shadow to make it appear as though it's in the original art gallery. Put him on the wall. It just looks like it even belongs there. And replace the book with a Razer laptop. If I wanted to go full bore on this, I could change the texture of the laptop to make it look like it's more of a painting. But this is good enough. Now the reason why I did this in Photoshop is because the image itself can be very, very, very large, and I can zoom in really far and not have to worry about zooming in on big pixels as I would with a 1080 or even a 4K image. That just wouldn't be big enough for me to be able to do such an enormous zoom. I could also have done this with After Effects, but I am not as familiar with After Effects.
Few generations. But when you
So I don't know if you've seen this AutoHotKey script yet. I probably used it earlier. This is one of the ones that I'm particularly proud of. It's my InstantVFX hot text selector mod. Basically what it does is inside the effect controls panel, it will find any given variable's hot text and then move the cursor there, click and hold the left mouse button virtually so that I can just move the mouse around in order to change that hot text without me having to physically move the mouse all the way over there manually. And then when I let go of the key, it moves the cursor back to where it was to begin with. So I'm just going to go through this script with you real quick here so that you understand how it works in case you want to modify it for your own setup, which you have to do. I mean, this won't work out of the box. It's called InstantVFX. It's got one parameter, but first the VFX key global variable must be defined so that it knows what to look for during the function. At the very beginning, we block the input of the mouse and keyboard so that it doesn't interfere with anything. Then we define a few variables, we save the x and y coordinates of the cursor, and then it gets the position of DroverLord window class 3, which is the unique identifier for what I know the effect controls panel is on my own particular version of Premiere. So you can use Windows Spy to figure out exactly what that is, but keep in mind that that number can and will change if you change your workspaces inside of Premiere. Then it moves the cursor to an extremely precise pixel on the effect controls panel where I know that the anti-aliasing on the very edge of this triangle is going to be a different color based upon whether it is untwirled or not. That is how I know if the effect controls are untwirled. So it goes through a couple of if statements and looks at colors to figure that all out. And if the color is just a normal panel color, it means that nothing has been loaded into the effect controls panel. And so it'll hit Control P, which is my shortcut for selection follows playhead, in order to select the topmost targeted track at the playhead. And then it'll hit Control P again, because I prefer to leave that option off most of the time. And then it just goes back to the beginning of the function and does everything again now that the controls are probably available. And assuming that you have an untwirled effects controls panel, then it goes on to find VFX, which is another function inside of this function, again with one single parameter. And then it runs an image search for some very, very carefully taken PNG screenshots using foobar as the parameter, which is the name of that image, whether it be scale or rotation or anchor point or what have you. This is a kind of a derpy way to do it, but it works, so whatever. So assuming that it finds those little images, it will move the cursor straight on top of that text, and then it searches for a very particular color of blue, which is the color that the scrubbable hot text uses, which is located always to the right. You see it searches all the way over, and when it finds blue, it'll stop, it'll put the cursor there, and it'll virtually press down the left mouse button for you. So right here, it checks to make sure that the VFX key is still being held down. If not, then it will reset the value of scale to 100 or rotation to 0. That's just a little bonus thing that I put in so that if you just tap the key, it'll reset that value rather than doing anything else. But assuming that you're still holding that key down, it enters this loop where you're given control back of the mouse cursor, and it will simply continue to hold down the left mouse button for you, and then you're free to move your mouse around in order to change the value of that hot text until you release the key. In which case it will run one last function to reset everything back to the way that it was, and it puts your mouse cursor back where it came from. Now there's one last thing that you might need in order to make this work, which is basically the hot text in Premiere is kind of broken, where it only starts to change if you really go quickly with your mouse, which is stupid. So there's another AutoHotKey script that you should have running all the time in case you have that bug, just to ensure that that bug is fixed. And once again, this is another thing that I wish was just a part of Premiere. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is animate this large image in Premiere to do a funny thing. Now, you may have noticed that I saved two different versions of this image. One where he has the regular newspaper thingy, and another where he has the Razer Blade laptop. So all I'm going to do is animate one of them, and then I'll take that entire clip on the timeline, duplicate it, and then do a replace image using the image that has the razor blade in it, and then I'll cross-dissolve between the two or do some kind of transition. That's just a quick, dirty way to accomplish what I want to do here. So you can either watch the process of that happening, or, because it's going to take a little while, I'm just going to use this opportunity to explain a couple of other things that I don't have any other place in the tutorial to get to. So here we go. Okay, so Premiere is obviously not the most stable of programs, and sometimes you have bugs and slowness and lag and stuff. Obviously, the first step is to close out of Premiere and reopen it. And if that doesn't work to fix your problem, then you restart your entire computer. And that's kind of the nuclear option, but it'll fix most things. However, sometimes even that does not work. And I've done a bit of experimentation to try to figure out how to recover from this, and there's still a couple of things you can do. So, if your problem is lag, slowness, and stuttering, you can try rendering audio previews. Even if you're somewhere else on the timeline, unrendered audio can still slow everything down. Also, if you have some really especially tricky video effects and stuff, just render some video previews on the timeline. Also be on the lookout for graphics that have had their speed changed. You're not supposed to be able to do that, but you can accidentally do it using the rate stretch tool. So if you find those, use the rate stretch tool to put them back to 100% speed. Another thing you can do is literally create a new sequence using the same sequence settings, but which matches the settings of your current sequence. And then use Control-A, highlight everything in your current sequence, and paste it over into that new sequence. And this has saved my bacon a couple of times with big old projects that are constantly crashing and constantly being slow. There's something magical about making a brand new fresh sequence where I think maybe because there were some linked previews or unrendered audio or maybe conformed audio that went bad or something. But doing that will potentially fix your issues. So try that out. Now, there are still plenty of other troubleshooting steps to try, and there is this absolutely fantastic post on the Adobe forums, which goes into very great detail about every single possible thing that might help you out. So I'm just going to link to that. You can read that at your leisure. I'm just showing you a scroll of the entire thing here, just in case the forums go down. I don't know. So you can read it here if absolutely necessary, but there you go.
Razer has been absolutely...
Okay, I think I remembered what the next shot was, C102. This is a really beautiful shot here. Nice blurred out background, Linus deep in thought. The movement is good, the focus is good. And I'm going to extend that shot as long as I can, actually, because it's nice to be able to hold on a nice looking shot. Also, on the subject of sequences, oh, this one drives me crazy. If you have, for example, a 4K sequence that is 3840 by 2160 pixels, and from that sequence you render a 1920 by 1080 video, all the footage will look good, but all the graphics and titles will look like pixely garbage, because they will have their resolution cut in half, which is nonsense. So you have to render at the sequence settings' resolution. There's no way around it. Okay, so I don't remember exactly what happened, but I was thinking that I accidentally must have deleted a piece of my script. So I'm looking back through an older script to see if it's the same. What can happen sometimes is if a B-roll shooter or an editor opens up what they think is the latest version of a script, and they start working on it and saving stuff, but in fact the writer had forgotten to save their latest version, and then they do save their latest version, then you'll have two different scripts that each contain not all the information that they need. So if that happens, you just have to copy-paste the info from one script into another, but that's not what happened here. I just accidentally cut a paragraph in half with the Enter key. Anyway, back to Premiere. So I mentioned this in the last tutorial, and I'll mention it again. Nesting fixes a lot of problems. I believe the default shortcut for that is Control N. So, you just highlight a bunch of clips, hit Control N, and all those clips turn into one clip. And then you can do whatever you like with that one single clip, and all of those things will move together. It's the After Effects equivalent of parenting. So if you're ever confused on how to do something complex with a whole bunch of layers, nesting is probably the answer. Just, experiment with it and see what you can get out of it. Just keep in mind that it will limit the resolution that you have to work with, because it will set the resolution of everything inside the sequence to whatever the resolution is of the parent sequence. I hope that made sense. One alternative to nesting is to render a small piece of the timeline and re-import it. These thermal shots are intended to be stitched together and then have their values overlaid in Photoshop. And I didn't know that at first, but now I do know. And that's quite a lot of work. So again, this is not a tutorial for Photoshop. I'm just going to fast forward, power through this, and you'll see the final result. Okay, so 17 minutes pass of me photoshopping these thermal shots together, and my scratch disks are suddenly full, so I have to clear that. And then also I have a meeting about something or other, I don't remember what, and so it's 1:50 right now, and when I get back from the meeting, suddenly we've lost a lot of time, and it's 4:09. Ah! Now I only have 2 hours minus 9 minutes to get the video finished. And it looks like we spend another couple of minutes fixing up the Photoshop again. Let's see how much longer that takes me. Okay, so that took an additional 10 minutes, meaning that it took me 27 minutes just to make this one single graphic. Now that's more time than I would like. I'm not great with Photoshop. I actually don't know a lot of the keyboard shortcuts. I don't have any fancy pants macros set up. I don't have any actions set up inside of Photoshop. I should probably learn more about it, because I use it often enough where that would become worthwhile to learn that stuff. Yeah, you know what? That's in the title unsafe zone. I think I end up raising the final one a little bit.
And while the blade has been good enough for a while for me to use...
So I learned Photoshop from some university course, and the hilarious and disappointing thing was that the teacher just told us to go purchase a lynda.com subscription and learn Photoshop that way, and she didn't really teach us all that much herself. She just kind of assigned homework. So I was thinking, why didn't I just use lynda.com in the first place? And now that's what I do. But that was years ago, and I could probably use a refresher and learn some more advanced things in Photoshop, because I'm sure there's a lot that I just don't know about.
Has been absolutely refining the experience, with the improvement to surface temperatures of the device during use being one of the most noticeable day to day. And while the blade has been good enough for a while for me to use as a work first, game second kind of person, it wasn't until this generation that it was good enough.
Let's lock those tracks down so we can put more B-roll on top. Till it was good enough to spend money on it, dropping $25,000 US on these machines for my entire staff. Okay, he's asking for either the Making It Rain shot from Scrapyard Wars, or the shot of him passing out laptops to everybody at the Christmas party. So I'm looking through here, looking around. There's a lot of footage in here. But you know what? I think it's actually in Scrapyard Wars 3. So let's go look in there. Ah, okay. It's even in its own special fancy folder. So here's all the Making It Rain shots. Now, like I said before, my familiarity with our backlog of videos makes it easy for me to find this sort of footage quite quickly. And in fact, I will even go out of my way to name things in such a way where it's easy for me to search for them later. For some reason, it always makes that sound when I import. And I'm also going to go look to see if I can find a good shot from the Christmas prank video as well.
All of the gifts contain the
And now I've found it. It's this dolly shot of all the laptops at once. The issue is that there's text on top of it. So I need to find the original shot. And fortunately, because we save absolutely every single piece of footage that we've ever shot, which is kind of crazy, I have this shot. I have the original, and I can plop it right in. So here I've got a slightly mislabeled bin of all my pilfered shots from other videos. And I'm just going to look through here for the part that I need. Now you might notice that you're hearing all the audio in the right channel. And obviously that's just because probably there was a shotgun attached to the right channel and maybe not anything on the left. Alright, let's scrub through. Let's see if they do that again. Come on. Really? Psh. I think they mess it up every single time. Whatever, we're just going to have to go with it. I mean, that's what was in the original video. And now I'm just looking through all these Scrapyard Wars shots to find the one where Linus is making it rain and it pans down. Yep, that's the one. Let's find a good moment there. Set in-out points, put it on the timeline, and...
It wasn't until this generation that it was good enough for me to spend real money on it, dropping over $25,000 US on these machines for my entire staff.
So with this horrifically yellow shot, I've got to try to do some kind of color correction. So I'm using the tangent ripple. And it looks better already, but I can't get rid of that horrible yellow shine on the trophies in the background. One thing I find useful is to go way too far when you're doing color correction, and then dial it back.
So, in spite of the very small
Okay, back to the script here. Let's see. Glam done 107. Let's find that. Oh, I let out an audible ooh when I saw this shot. Very, very nice shot. Brandon does me proud sometimes.
improvements.
This one I'm going to save for the end. Oh, it does go at the end. How lovely. So it's nice to get a nice look at something like this.
Do I think the Blade 2016 is the best Blade yet? You're damn right I do. Let's just hope that they don't trash the 2017 model by putting that awful keyboard from the...
Okay, next shot is 112 or 113. But before I do that, I'm just going to go grab this shot from a previous video, the Razer Blade Pro video, where he complains about the keyboard being terrible. Now, boy, this is a long tutorial, so I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but we have kind of a standard scheme for labeling old footage and labeling other people's videos versus our videos versus just shots of products that may or may not have been from our videos. So this is the Razer Blade Pro 2016, and I have to label that because if you're watching this video and you don't know these products really well, you won't necessarily know that you're looking at a different laptop. And right there, I had to fix up the kerning on the 1 of the font Babus Nue, because whatever genius designed this font, they screwed up the kerning on the 1. And Babus Nue has a few other problems that I want to get fixed.
awful keyboard from the... trash the 2017 model by putting that awful keyboard from the Blade Pro on it. Or the next...
So where the next sentence begins, I add edit to all tracks, then select the remainder of those clips and delete them, then switch to Word to find the next shot, then I go and find the next shot in Premiere, and now I'm back over here looking at that next shot. So this shot, unfortunately, is really problematic for quite a number of reasons, which I will get into.
Or the next time my employees get new computers, they might be from Apple. So thanks for watching.
But basically, they just didn't time it out properly. Someone on set should have had the script open, and they should have just been reading from the script so that the actors, Linus and Luke in this case, could get the timing down to match up with the spoken word. And the shot that they got is like 3 or 4 times longer than what it should be. So I have to do jump cuts to fit this all in. Or I could try some speed ramping, which is what I'm doing right here. That uses the pin tool. You can ease sort of the ends there, pull that up to change the speed. And oh, it's a double move. It goes to him and then it realizes that it's not quite on him and then it has to pan back up. I want to keep the move because it's funny, but I don't think there's enough time in here.
Apple.
Yeah, it looks okay.
Be from Apple.
Ugh. That's a pretty harsh move there. So I'm just gonna undo all of that stuff and try something else. Let's see. Cut it right there. That's when it's actually still. Okay, maybe I can hide right in here. I can hide the actual change.
Apple.
Straight cut, no. I could use cross dissolve? It's not great. Maybe a push. Impact push. That's better. It's still not great. Trimming, ripple trimming there. Extend it out a little bit, see if that helps. Yeah, you can see Linus starting to come. Yeah.
Apple.
It's okay.
Please get new computers. They might be from.
So, I don't know. I'm deleting some things, moving stuff around. I'm going to take a look here at the beginning of this shot. I'm going to save what I had cut already. Him walking in. There's not enough lead in. This looks like an alternative take. When Linus starts walking forward, oh, he's out of focus. This is so frustrating to me as an editor. Like, this shot was out of focus both times, and both times the movement of the camera is awkward and doesn't land on its mark as it should.
Or the next time my employees get new computers, they might be from Apple.
So really, each aspect of this should have been its own individual shot. You know, Linus walking up with lots of lead in, Linus handing the laptop to Luke, Luke rejecting the laptop, and finally, Linus's reaction. That would make this a lot easier to edit. However, it would still be too many shots because we're working with just 14 words worth of time here, and that's just not enough time to fit all of this in. I could choose to cut out Linus reacting, but I think that's the punchline. I can't cut it. I could call for a reshoot, but then Luke, Linus, and Brandon are all going to be upset. I've had to do that before. Sometimes they'll agree, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, it's fine, just here's what we got." And this is why I'll always say, "Okay, I'll use it this time, but please in the future would you do whatever." Okay, we're just going to fast forward through the next few minutes here because it's just boring and miserable, and I don't succeed in getting these timings to work. So I decide that I'm going to use some music that sounds like Insane Clown Posse to end the whole segment, and that'll also give me a little bit more time to make that joke work. First of all, I need to hear what they actually sound like. So I watch one of their videos, and finding music is such a long process. You can see here, I keep going back to the video. It helps to go in the center of a song, so start listening to it from there. But in this case, I'm actually listening for the ending of the song, so I'm clicking to find that. So I'm just listening to a whole bunch of hip-hop, and I don't know how to do this. It can take an enormous amount of time. So I'm just downloading a couple of good tracks. Really what, the only solution that I know of is to just become familiar with whatever music library you have. Take a day and just go through and listen to all the music and organize it in your mind, man. And that's how I've been able to find some really good music, just because I already knew that it was there. Because no matter what tags you search for, whoever put the music library together probably used different tags. Like, I've searched for cheerful, and I get songs that are not cheerful at all. You just gotta be familiar with the library. So I figure this one's good enough.
From Apple. So thanks for watching, guys.
So this is just me fiddling with the timings of the music and the final shot.
From Apple.
And now I'm just trying the monoMaker to see what it'll sound like in mono.
So thanks for watching, guys. If this video sucked, you know what to do. But if it was awesome...
Okay, now we are at the end of the Razor Blade video. So just plop it on the music here. That was the end of the B-roll first pass.
Probably wondering what to watch next, so click.
So I'm just going to go to another sequence to copy and then paste in the ending assets. Notice how this defaults to track number 1, the bottommost targeted track by default. I wish it would paste into the top targeted track by default, but you can't change that. And now, once again, I'm returning to this very end part of the video, just trying to figure out, like, you know, how should I do the timing, you know, maybe I need more. And I just fiddle around with this for way, way too long. So I could just fast forward through this like I did for the photoshopping adventure, but because you have the ability to skip to the next chapter, I'm just going to say you can do that if you want. And honestly, you're really not going to miss much because it's just me figuring out this ending here. But I'm going to leave it in the tutorial simply because it's important to be aware of this phenomenon where you're just butting your head up against a wall and really not making much progress. And it's valuable for at least me to see this, and maybe you as well, to know what not to do. And you know what? This probably happens to me more often than I would like to believe. And one thing that I have found from doing these tutorials is that I'm sort of auditing my own workflow, and I'm being made more aware of the deficiencies and the problems and the dumb things that I do. Like with the last tutorial, Brandon actually happened to be recording in the editing room, and he recorded me working on my computer, and I noticed that my left hand was going all over the keyboard to get to various different shortcuts, which is why today I have all of the most commonly used ones mapped directly underneath and around where my left hand sits on home row, right? So little things like that, you don't notice them as you're doing them because you're busy working. But if you look back on yourself, I don't know, you record yourself or you record your screen, you become more aware. And another way to do this is to watch other people work. You'll see someone doing something stupid and you'll realize, oh, I do that stupid thing too. I shouldn't do that. Which, of course, is why I'm leaving this footage in the tutorial in the first place. So while this is going, I might as well take the opportunity to talk about a few more problems that I see with amateur videos on YouTube or wherever else. One of the big differences between amateur and professional work that I have noticed is that the pros pay a lot more attention to something called eye trace, where you're just aware of where the viewer's eye is going to be located on the screen at any given moment. Oh, and here I'm just trying to find a specific photograph of the MacBook Pro, so I'm going to fast forward through this. Anyway, Walter Murch actually puts eye trace as item number 4 on his list of the 6 things to keep in mind when making a cut, giving it only a 7% kind of importance rating. But I really do feel like professional movies pretty much consider where your eye is going to be looking at every single moment. There's this great video on YouTube titled How Mad Max Fury Road Directed You by the film theorists, and it goes into this in a lot more detail. So I'm just going to leave it at that and say that it is far more pleasant to have your eye pulled from place to place and have your eye already where it needs to be when a cut is made. It really does make the viewing experience a lot nicer when you don't have to be constantly searching for the one thing that you're supposed to be looking at. And this is another mistake that beginners make. There can only be one thing that you're looking at. Only one thing. Because human beings have two eyes which must converge on a single point. We can look at one thing at a time. And then we move our eyes very rapidly to look at the next thing. But if we were spiders, then maybe we'd be able to look at more than one thing at a time. We're not. And lately, I've really been cracking down on the use of quotes in our videos, where, for example, you're showing a website that's just got a solid paragraph of text, and the editor just puts that up on screen and doesn't highlight anything, and the implication is that you were supposed to have read it and found the most relevant information while the host is talking? That's ridiculous. The human brain really can't split its attention between having to read something and also simultaneously having to listen to something completely different, even if those two things are somewhat related. So, in the video, the host either has to be reading out exactly what that text is, or you get like 6, maybe 8 words that a viewer can read and keep in the back of their head while listening to other words. Now, there is one exception to this. With a lot of our graphs, for example, we design them to, well, ideally, to be readable while the host is talking without having to pause, so that you'll just see like one important bit of information per graph. But if you want more info, the implication is that you can pause the video to get that info, but it's not necessary to understand the video, and that's the key. One more mistake that I see in other people's videos sometimes is the video maker not considering the effect of bitrate or low bitrate on their videos. Now, back in the good old days, we shot on film stock, which was basically just a long strip of photographic negatives, and you didn't have to worry about bitrate at all. That's film. Video is very different. Video is electronic, and for web streaming, it must be compressed, because otherwise the files would be ridiculously huge. But certain things do not lend themselves very well to video compression. Things like confetti, and snow, and flocks of birds, like lots and lots of birds. Random static, like on a TV screen, is the least compressible thing ever. And gradients. A really smooth gradient will suffer from a lot of banding, you'll notice. And the more subtle the gradient is, the worse the banding effect becomes. And that's the reason why I think we should swap out the background for fast as possible with something that has a bit more texture to it. Okay, and at this point, I think I'm satisfied with what I've done. So I start up on the very end of the video, the outro, delete the little apple here, and you'll notice that I am editing as he's talking, moving stuff around while the video's playing. I do this all the time, although it does lead to crashes sometimes, because the Adobe guys don't really expect you to work that quickly. I designed this part to be scalable, just like that. So I can just expand that part out and the rest of it will stay good. Get rid of the unnecessary title for that because we decided not to put text up there because the little I thing has its own text. And now I need to find a part of this video that is most representative of the Blade Pro. So I need a nice shot. Now usually you're going to find those at the very beginning or the very end. However, I did edit this video, the Razer Blade Pro video, and I remember, and I can see after scrubbing through the whole thing, that in fact, there was no good shot of the front of the laptop with just the desktop showing. There's a shot of some random video playing on it, but then the video itself becomes the focus of the shot, not the laptop as a whole. So the footage that I used here was just whatever.
the top right corner to check out my review of the Blade.
That's another little audio glitch you just heard in your left ear. The audio glitches you received while scrubbing through and listening through in Premiere used to be so much worse. There would be this really loud, horrible buzzing. That's gone now, fortunately. So I keep scrubbing through here trying to find a nice shot, and eventually, for whatever stupid reason, I decide upon this shot, even though it really doesn't show the whole laptop. And that was certainly a mistake of mine, although there really wasn't much to choose from. Anyway, continuing on.
Right corner to check out my review of the Blade Pro, the bigger, badder brother.
All right, so it took me too long to finish up that final shot, but now I am truly and totally done with the B-roll first pass. So now I'll take a break and then go back through and resolve the markers and fix anything else. That alarm you just heard was the 5 o'clock sound. On my phone, I have it programmed with Llama, just a sort of a chime at the top of the hour to remind me. So it's 5 o'clock, and I need the benchmarks for this laptop, but Linus is on the WAN show on Fridays after 4:30 until 6. So I have to go and visit him. So this is from the WAN show. This actually happened. I've never done this before, but just watch.
Yeah, so basically the moral of the story is that Ed is one of those nerds who sits and don't move that chair. Ed is one of those nerds that sits and practices Mario Kart by himself so that when all of his friends come over, he can be like, oh, I'm gonna hide behind this weak justification that I wanted to unlock all the characters. But actually, all he's done is create an environment where no one else can have any fun playing with him.
So Linus got mad at me there because whenever I sit in a chair, I always tilt it all the way back, and they hate it when I do that. And it's just one lever to put it back. Now, you may think it's severely unprofessional of me to interrupt a live show while it's playing, but in fact, if you know about the WAN show, we do silly stuff like this all the time.
That was how I cleverly lured him over here. Thank you, Ed.
Linus.
Yes, what can I do for you? Talk louder, the microphone is here.
Did you get thermals for the Razer Blade Pro late 2016 for the GPU and CPU temperatures? Because I don't have a graph for it and John has no data. There. This has nothing to do with the WAN show. I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize.
Thermals. I don't know, are they in the folder?
John says he doesn't have it.
Is there a place for it to go?
Well, yeah, you say it in the script.
What do I say exactly?
You say thermals of GPU and CPU.
Graphs. And
I don't have that information. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
So that's a great question, and I have a really good answer for you. That is that I will use my Razer Blade late 2016, which I have right in front of me, and I will run a stress test right now.
Wow.
On the show.
On the show.
That's right, folks. You are seeing live creation.
Benchmarking.
You are seeing live on our live video. You are seeing us live create a video. Yes, my friends, that is what is going on.
This is how
right
janky
now,
things get sometimes.
in this moment.
Yeah. Here,
I'm working on it. Holy actual balls.
Oh, what are you doing?
Are you coming back to the show?
Okay, bye. Bye, everyone.
It's not really coming back to the show if you were never on it, but yeah. So how's the Surface Studio?
Really, mostly cool. Watch the review. Like what I did there?
So, looks like benchmarks are being created. So while I wait for those, I'll just begin the final pass, fix everything up, add any glam or anything else that is still remaining, resolve all the markers, then we'll be done.
Razer Blade late 2016 since launch. In fact, I bought a dozen of the first one screen or a matte 1920 by 1080. I've had a review unit of the Razer Blade late 2016.
Fast forwarding this. So right here, I am looking for a shot of the laptop open with the desktop visible. Now you saw that there's 3 shots here that have that, but that is a specific shot for the GPU attachment. And so that doesn't work. Here's some cell phone shots that I'm deleting. Those are in the wrong spot. But basically, Brandon actually did not get a single shot of the front of the laptop, just showing the desktop. So I could tell him to go shoot another shot, but it's already 5:12 and he's busy doing something else. So instead, what I'm going to do is grab a shot from the website of the product. Now, I do this sometimes, especially when it has to do with like stats or specs of the product. I don't think I did much of that for this one. In fact, I'm at the end now and I'm only just looking at the product page. So I'm actually just scrolling through here trying to see, oh, maybe there is something important that I should have included as part of the video, but there's not. So I'm expanding the page a little bit horizontally, and then I hit Control plus 1 or 2 times. And that's something that's very subtle but very, very valuable when you're taking screenshots of web pages. If you use Control plus, it will increase the size of all of the text and the graphics, but because the text is vector-based, it will always look really, really good. So you won't have any pixely text when you zoom in on it. Now, the plugin that I'm using for screenshots in Firefox is called Screen Grab with an exclamation mark. And it is wonderfully, gloriously wonderful because somehow it's able to virtually extend the bottom of a page in order to take a multi-page screenshot almost instantaneously. However, in this case, I only needed to take 2 single-page screenshots because I didn't need the entire page this time. Warning, update time. Firefox forced an update that involves web extensions and it doesn't support everything anymore, and now the Screen Grab plugin is worthless and doesn't work instantaneously anymore. It's super slow, forgets where you saved, and has a lot of other problems. I hate updates. Oh, I hate them. This worked perfectly, and now it sucks. So, if you know of any program that can take instantaneous full-page screenshots like Screen Grab used to be able to, please leave a comment. So I've just imported those 2 screenshots, and I'm putting this one at the very beginning of the entire video, which was the biggest mistake of the entire edit. The reason is, you need to begin a video with your best shot, and you should end the video with your second best shot. And this graphic is terrible to begin the video with because the text Paragon is very prevalently displayed. And you're not looking at the laptop, you're looking at the game on the laptop. So even though that one shot had the D-brand skin on it, I probably just should have used that.
I'm back in October so I could box them up and give them out at my staff Christmas party. So why then did it take me so long to do this review? Because I was waiting for a very...
Now, I remember that there's a very nice shot of Chelsea opening her laptop box in this video somewhere, and because this was exported in cineform, it allows for extremely fast timeline scrubbing, which is why I insist that we always have a cineform copy of all of our videos, because there's going to be like 100 shots in a single video, and this makes it way easier to find one. Alright, that's what I'm looking for. In and out points. Plop that on the timeline.
I could box them up and give them out at my staff Christmas party. So why then did it take me so long to do this review?
Okay, so here just fixing up timings for that B-roll. There's 3 shots to show in a very short amount of time. So figuring out the best way to put that all together just takes a little bit.
So why then did it take me so long? Why then did it take me so long to do this review? Because I was waiting for a very special blade.
So I seem satisfied with that. And now Brandon is saying something.
What? Why are you fucked?
Because it's taken me far too long to finish this script, and I have not started finishing off my interviews. And I also have to come back in tonight, after my dinner tonight, to finish the B-roll.
Well, good thing I didn't have you get this shot that you didn't get of the razor blade of the front of it with a desktop. It's cool. I'll survive without it.
Taking a moment here to discuss what you just overheard. It's easy to say that I should have gotten that shot, and I should have. But I was pretty screwed for time as well. We are really busy at Linus Media Group, as you just heard. I was busy with this all day, Brennan was busy with stuff all day, and this whole video was being edited just one day before it goes up. And that's not ideal. And it's in this frantic atmosphere of, holy crap, we gotta get the video done immediately, as quickly as possible, and then do the same thing tomorrow, that I have developed this insane regime of 3 keyboards, 4 monitors, 100 macros, 200 AutoHotKey scripts, and so on, including the ripple tangent that I'm currently using to do some color correction. You can see that from the GUI on the top right. All of my workflow speed optimizations have been born from necessity, because if a video is not done and it's supposed to go up that night, then whoever's working on it has to stay to finish it, because otherwise we don't have a video. And we've established a pattern with our audience that we do a video every single day. Come hell or high water, it's got to get done. So, more important than editing a video quickly is having enough time to edit that video. And this is absolutely crazy, but we used to finish a video all in one day. Linus would write it in the morning and then shoot the A-roll and B-roll around noon. I'd get the footage around, I don't know, 2 o'clock, and I'd have like maybe 4 hours left in the day to edit that video. And often I'd have to stay late. And we did that way, way too much. And this is why, from the beginning, I've advocated for having at least 1 day of buffer between each of those stages. And lately, we have achieved that, which is great. It is rare that we will have to shoot A-roll and B-roll and edit a video on the same day unless there's a product that has some kind of embargo on it. But what I really want for us to have is a buffer of finished videos that can just go up at any time. And it's really amusing to see that Crash Course works not days, but weeks ahead, while we're over here working maybe 1 or 2 days ahead. So I've always been pushing for us to achieve a buffer of videos.
To let me showcase his beautiful prize in my...
But it's not happened yet because there's a bottleneck at the scripting stage. Researching and writing a video is a very time-intensive process. There's a lot that goes into it, and I'm always very impressed by how quickly Linus is able to do it. He probably has his own extremely fancy tricks and speed-optimized workflow for writing the videos. By the way, what I'm doing here is deleting one of these clips because it was a duplicate. Oops. Brendan had shot that twice, and I accidentally used both of them. But Linus is just one man, and it's it's impossible for him to do all of that writing and also do all the other stuff that he has to do as CEO of the company. So we've always known about the bottleneck at the writing stage, and that has always been the reason why we don't have nearly enough of a buffer, if we have one at all. And that is why we recently hired 3 new writers to write more videos, to fix the buffer problems, to get stuff done, to increase the quality of our content, to have Linus be less busy, because he's the busiest person I've ever known. He works very hard. So I don't think you guys actually know this, but the only reason why I started writing my own videos, like script writing for LTT, is because of that script writing bottleneck. Because we were so out of videos to edit. I was never hired to be a writer. I am a video editor. And I'm actually decent at writing, or so I hear, and I think my videos have been fairly well received. My first few ones were pretty bad. I'm not a host either. I didn't sign up to be a host. Learn by doing. Trial by fire. That is how things work around here. And in fact, now that we have the new writers and they're up to speed, things do indeed go a lot more smoothly around here. And Linus is now doing a lot of script review with those writers rather than writing all the scripts himself. So I'm just going to fast forward through this. It's color correction. I'm not very good at color correction. I really need to take some courses.
Now, what's the story with those graphs?
I'm sorry?
What's the story with those graphs?
Well, Linus is making them right now on his laptop that is doing the WAN show.
Why
He's
can't I
running
do
the
that?
tests. Oh, I don't know.
Oh, he's running tests on his
Yeah,
laptop.
he hasn't even done the test.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah. So, maybe he'll have to make the graphs, because you shouldn't have to stay late. It is his fault he didn't do it.
No problem, no problem.
There's color correction and there's color grading. I'm not great at either, but I don't know anything about color grading. Sometimes I'll plop a pre-made look on top of everything, and then Brandon wrinkles his nose because it was terrible, and I'll take it back off and say, okay, I really need to learn this stuff, and then I never do.
Hint, hint, razor.
Just fiddling with the timing of this thingy here. You see me do this a lot.
To go with its 3 USB 3 magnets. Hint, hint, razor. To go with its 3 USB 3-port power cord.
So I get to this point and I realize, hey, I can use the music that I already found over here, and it'll add some production value. Let's do that. So I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but I always put the audio gain on music down to about -24 to start. And from there I just play it by ear to try to figure out if it's a bit too loud or a bit too quiet. And if it gets louder during the song, I'll have to pin tool it up or down or something.
Hint, hint, razor.
This part is just me fixing up the timings a little bit more and then doing some color correction. Ah, boy, it's boring. You get a vignette. You get a vignette. You get a vignette. Everyone's getting vignettes. Speaking of things I'm not very good at, I'm looking at this note on the script here, and it says, dual shot with specs on screen, showing the previous and current models. This calls for some text tracking. And I'm not great with Adobe After Effects. And that's kind of weird because it's exactly my kind of program. You can do scripting inside the program itself. So I really, really need to learn some more After Effects. Actually, it was really misbehaving on this one. I don't know why. I had to retrack it several times. It was miserable. Whatever, it's done. This is not an After Effects tutorial, so if you want advice on that, I am not your man.
CPU.
Here I'm just adjusting the framing to make it centered more properly. This is why I like wider shots. They're more adjustable.
Same. RAM. Same. Battery. Same. Though the maximum NVMe SSD. Though the maximum NVMe SSD size got done.
I should have added a little bit of motion to these upcoming shots. It's kind of annoying when you're watching a video and the screen is totally still. You don't know if the video is frozen or not.
And the GTX 970M from last night, and the GTX 970M from last gen has been bumped to a GTX 1060, which means the newest blade GTX 1060, which means the newest blade is a very capable little
Everyone gets vignettes! You know what I really like about the ripple tangent? Is that you can color correct while the video is playing. Ah! And here I am, creating a title. But you've already seen me do that, so I'm fast forwarding to save your sanity and mine.
Translates to up to double the frame rate in games. Now, obviously, you can turn down.
Can you guys all have your discussion elsewhere? Because I'm still working on today's video.
And it's good? You liked it?
Yeah, I think Taran, you should probably say that loud.
I'm still doing today's video.
On the touchscreen model to 1080p, but then you're dealing with interpolation instead of a crisp native resolution image. And for me personally, the difference in sharpness has...
Linus, I need your help with this.
Just go.
Hey, Linus.
I think I just needed his help with the placement of exactly where the graphs go, and I'll consult with whoever wrote the video for stuff like that.
Then the massive difference in frame rates that make animations on the 1080p.
Especially with graphs, things can get really weird where it's like, oh, you were supposed to show this graph at this point, even though there's no words on the graph that would imply that it belongs here in the script. Bleh. And it gets weirder where a graph is just kind of shown and you're just supposed to kind of look at it,
Has a much
even though it's not directly talked about. And that's something that I need to encourage Linus not to do. Like I said before, a person can't split their attention between two totally different things. So if I'm having to show a graph on screen that has nothing to do with what the host is talking about, people aren't going to pay attention to that graph because it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, you'll notice that I am painstakingly pasting the transition that I just custom created onto each of those edit points, but like I said before, you can't save most transitions as presets. Even with the ones you can save, you can only apply them one at a time. One of the reasons, aside from the waste of time, that I get so annoyed at the lack of certain features in Premiere is because of my RSI, or tendonitis. That's my hands. And because we have plenty of time here, I'm going to explain that whole thing. And by the way, again, this is the final pass that I'm doing through the video, so I'm taking the time to watch the whole thing, but as I watch, I'm making fixes, right? So for this upcoming section here, like I said, the human brain can only focus on one thing at a time, really. So you can either listen to me talking about RSI, or you can just focus on the visuals of what I'm doing in Premiere, because those speak for themselves. So anyway, time to talk about RSI. And this is really important, because you do not want to get RSI. A lot of people don't know this, but I had to take a leave of absence from Linus Media Group for 3 months because the RSI in my hands was really bad. So that's tendonitis, or repetitive strain injury, from using a mouse and a keyboard continuously for, well, in my case, years. But the stress of the new job probably didn't help. Carpal tunnel is a bit of a different thing, by the way. That's has to do with vibrations rather than repetitive strain. So don't get it confused. Anyway, the pain in both of my hands and arms was so intense that I could not use a computer. And I was also having trouble brushing my teeth. I got an electric toothbrush for that purpose. Turning doorknobs, doing the laundry, doing dishes, like things that people with hands do. It was all very difficult for me, very painful. And I tried so many things to fix my RSI. I tried anti-inflammatories in pill form and as a topical cream, but that only ever seems to treat the symptoms temporarily. I tried hot-cold contrast baths, I tried stretches, I tried the TheraBand Flex Bar, wraps and braces and massage, ultrasonic and laser treatments, vitamins and stuff like curcumin. I tried using my hands a lot, I tried not using my hands a lot. I read John E. Sarno's book, The Mind-Body Prescription, and he says that pain like this is psychosomatic in origin, and therefore you have to do mental exercises to fix it. And shockingly, that actually worked for a few months, and then it stopped working, and ultimately, none of those things had any noticeable or lasting effect. So I was afraid that my career was over just as soon as it had begun, and that I'd have painful hands forever and just be effectively disabled. But fortunately, I found something that actually works, at least for my version of RSI, and that is to go to the gym and do bench press and rows. That's it. So I started on a program called Strong Lifts 5x5, which I highly recommend, by the way, if you're just starting weightlifting, and this was and continues to be my saving grace. One day after I go to the gym, the pain diminishes. 2 days after, it's completely gone, and 4 days later, it starts to come back, which is why I must go to the gym 2 times a week at a minimum. This solution might not necessarily work for you, but I do advocate physical fitness for everyone. I mean, you can't afford not to exercise. And back to the edit for a moment. So whooshes are a very, very versatile sound effect. There's a lot of different kinds of whooshes. So right here, I'm just kind of messing with timings and trying different types of whooshes in different places. And the whooshes that I chooses didn't really quite work. It sounded more like an object being moved past the camera rather than the camera itself moving.
But when you look closely, Razer has been absolutely refining.
I can't really tell you why. Like, it wasn't a big enough sounding whoosh. I don't know. Just, you know, something to be aware of. You gotta choose the right whoosh for the right thing. And obviously, don't make them too loud. Okay, back to physical fitness for a moment. If you do start going to the gym, at my advice, just make sure you do not hyperextend your limbs, which means bending them beyond 180 degrees, at least as far as I can tell. Now here's the really frustrating part. I didn't want to hurt myself, so I did a ton of research on the proper form for all the big exercises. That's bench press, rows, overhead press, squatting, and deadlifting. And in all of that research, I found a lot of sources that were saying you should be locking your knees at the top of a squat. However, the term locking was never defined, and I still to this day cannot find a good definition for it. So what I think it means is going to 180 degrees on that joint, but no further. Going beyond 180 degrees would be hyperextension. And I'm pretty sure that that's the reason why I'm having knee problems now. Anyway, sorry for the massive tangent right there. It's just that exercise is really important, but only if you do it the right way or you're just gonna hurt yourself. Speaking of which, also for my RSI, I use a power ball on the days I don't go to the gym. And it's hard to tell, but I think it does help quite a bit.
By putting that awful keyboard from the Blade Pro on it. Or the next time my employees get new computers, they might be from Apple. So thanks for watching, guys.
Oh, by the way, in addition to noise isolation in your editing area, it's also important to have light isolation, in the sense that you don't want any bright lights behind you, because then they would be reflecting off the screen, even if it is a matte screen, and it should be a matte screen, not glossy. And whatever wall is behind the monitor should be a neutral color, and that will simply help your color correction to be that much more accurate. Here I'm thinking that I might want to make a tweak to the color correction of the A roll, and I can do so very easily because I used a master clip.
You're done doing all that stuff. You're probably wondering what to watch next, so click that little button in the top right corner to check out my review of the Blade Pro, the bigger, badder brother.
I've had a review.
Okay, so I'm done with the third pass of the video, and usually that's when I am finished with the whole video. And so that's when I render the video. However, in this case, for some reason I'm not realizing that I still have to get those benchmarks into the video. And even after that, it's still not that simple. There's still some more things that I have forgotten to do that I notice on my fourth and final pass. So I'm just going to skip forward in time to when I get those benchmarks. Chapter 12, the final pass. So as I'm putting in the GPU and CPU temperatures for 10 minutes, it's a little boring, so I'm going to talk about the theory for why and how I use Premiere. So pay attention, kids. Right here I have one of the files I need from Linus, so while I wait for the other one, I'm just doing some color correction, because why not? Make the video look a little better. Here I go, plopping in the recording of AIDA64. I always insist that AIDA64 screen recordings have the application in windowed mode, not in full screen mode, and that's because all of the little temperatures and tiny little on-screen elements are a lot closer together in windowed mode. So now I can more easily punch in on them to show the audience.
They run hot. Interestingly, the higher frame rates of the 1080p model puts more strain on the CPU while gaming.
And right there, we've skipped over 8 minutes, and I think I had a conversation with Linus there, but it wasn't captured. And I have the GPU temperatures. So we're going to go grab those. They're right here. Import that, double click on it, get it in the source monitor. It was done with, wait a minute, Okay, oh, right there at the end. Okay, he runs a game and then shows the temperature. And the little annoying monitoring window keeps popping up, so Linus has to move around in order to get it to vanish. So I'll have to freeze frame it when it's not present.
Yes, the scripts are ready.
Oh, okay. That was audio captured from XSplit when Linus was doing the recording for the GPU temperatures, where I hear that Linus was talking about scripts and Brandon sounds upset, which means they were probably going to shoot some more A-roll, even after it is now 6:39, and I think Linus has some more videos to shoot because it's Friday, and we needed them for the next Monday. Obviously, as you just saw, Premiere crashed, and I'm grabbing the most latest and greatest version of this video because I have the date modified information. I can see which the latest version actually is, and I think I said this before, but I now have a script that just does that. I push one button, and I've already told it the folder I want it to look into, and it will find the latest Premiere project file and just open it for me. And as you can see once more, Premiere has crashed. Now, on the list of things that waste my time, Premiere bugs and slowness is near or at the top. By the way, I'm actually waiting for some conforming to finish. You can see with the loading bar on the bottom right, because I want that to finish before I try opening it again. Anyway, people ask, why do you still use Premiere, Taran? Obviously, you complain about it all the time, and it has all these bugs and problems. Like, what are you doing? Well, it's kind of like democracy. Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. You're basically trying to choose between the lesser of a few evils here. You know, Premiere, yeah, there's stuff that makes me mad, but it also does a lot of things that I do like. Of course, I don't focus on those as much because I probably take them for granted. I have used Final Cut 7. I've used Avid. I've used DaVinci Resolve 14. But I don't have nearly as much experience with those as I do with Premiere. So I'd have to, of course, retrain myself to become proficient once again. But that's not really the problem. The problem is, like, I don't think Avid is worth switching to. It's a really old program, and it forces you into a particular workflow, and I hate being told what to do, and I just remember it being very frustrating to work with, but I should probably revisit it. And Final Cut X is supposed to be amazing, but it only works on Macintosh, and I don't want to give up everything else wonderful about being on a PC just for the sake of one single program. Like, I have everything else set up just the way I like it. And then to have to change operating systems, I don't think that's worth it. And DaVinci Resolve 14 is showing a lot of promise lately, but it still is not nearly at the level that Premiere is at. For example, you can't even assign multiple shortcuts to one single command using the shortcuts assignment panel in DaVinci Resolve 14, and that's terrible. That feature, to me, is non-negotiable. I have to have that, because if I don't, I can't set up a lot of my AutoHotKey scripts, which I use, of course, to make up for the deficiencies that will almost certainly exist. So a lot of people have asked me if I recommend Premiere Pro, and honestly, sometimes I just don't know. I'd say it's great for beginners, it's great for intermediates, but for experts like myself, there are just far too many things missing. The best analogy that I can come up with is, imagine that Adobe made cookware, and they've made this stock pot that only has one handle on it. The rest of the stock pot is pretty good, but with only one handle, it's significantly less usable than it should be. It feels to me like the designers just don't understand why we need an additional handle, or even what a chef generally needs in a kitchen. So, to explain all of this, I do have a 200 plus line spreadsheet of bugs and features in Premiere, ranked in order of what I think the priority should be and in order of how often I encounter these problems. And I also have a 3-hour-long Premiere Pro problems playlist that explains about half of them in very great detail. If you really want to watch that, you can. And I've used the wish form to send all of this stuff to the Premiere development team, and in fact, they even sent 2 employees to our studio to check out the way that I and all the other people here use Premiere and Media Encoder and Prelude. So good on them for doing that. That was very nice of them to visit. But a lot of my concerns with the program have still gone unaddressed. So it feels like they're really concerned about improving the thermal properties of the bottom of the pot, while I'm over here telling them that the cracks in the pot, bugs, and the missing handle should be fixed first. That's why I get frustrated. So, ultimately, I can not endorse or recommend Premiere Pro until a lot of these issues get fixed. And if you've encountered any of these, there's a link to the spreadsheet. Go check it out. And by all means, tell me if I'm wrong about any one of these items. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but you better bring your A game. And if any of these items have affected you, please fill out a wish form. And then maybe one day, we'll get some of these things. Or maybe DaVinci Resolve will beat them to the punch. So at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that my workflow has been heavily inspired by video game speedrunning. So I'm going to explain that right now. The first speedrun I ever saw was of Mario 64 being beaten in like 20 minutes. And I was amazed at the crazy things that the player was able to do just by clever manipulation of glitches in the game to get through a door by using the bunny and so on and so forth. And ever since then, I've been fascinated with the idea of this kind of extremely high strategy. It looks like cheating, but speedrunning is not cheating. Cheating in a speedrun would be modifying the hardware or the software, and that is not allowed. What speedrunning is working inside the confines of a system, but you are allowed to exploit anything you possibly can to achieve your goal. Absolutely every decision that you make is influenced by one single idea, that you need to save as much time as possible. Everything else goes out the window. It doesn't matter how many lives you have, it doesn't matter what your health is, or how much ammo you have, or where you are, and from that simple idea, you get these insane strategies. For example, in Final Fantasy VII, the speedrunners will count the number of steps they are taking from the beginning of the game all the way to the end of the game several hours later, because doing so allows them to know what the game's pseudo-random number generator is going to do in regards to the, quote, random, unquote, battles that they find themselves in.
Once I reach the bottom of the crater, hold on a second. Once I've reached the bottom of the crater, that updates some variables in the game to make it think I've legitimately reached the equivalent of disk 3s.
And this results in hours of time being saved. I've actually done my own speedrun of Spider-Man 2, and I had the world record for a little while. Watch for the most epic boss fight you've ever seen. Watch this. And he's dead. It was a whole lot of fun, but I'll never do it again. It really is quite a time suck. But with the things that I learned from my own speedrun and from watching other speedruns, especially those with commentary, I have now been able to come up with strats for Adobe Premiere. Now, unlike video game speedrunning, in application speedrunning, there are absolutely no rules. You can manipulate the hardware. You can manipulate the software. And I definitely have. If there was a button that I could put in Premiere where I would push it and it would edit the whole video for me, I would absolutely install that button and then tell no one about it because I'd be out of a job. But that's what artificial intelligence is going to do, isn't it? It's a brave new world. Basically, the whole idea behind this tutorial can be summarized with one sentence. When you think of something that you want to do, you should be able to do it as quickly as possible. Or, every millisecond counts. As soon as you have a goal like that in mind, everything becomes crystal clear and you can cut through all the nonsense. I don't care what anything is designed to do, I care about what it can do, to quote Apollo 13, my favorite movie. So, rather than just copying the things that I'm showing you here today, it's much more important that you understand them. What's valuable here is the method of thinking about the problem. And I learned that method of thinking from watching video game speedruns. Okay, and with that, we have made it to chapter 13. Now, I don't think I've explained this yet, but I'm editing in a 1080p cineform preview timeline. You set that all up in your sequence settings, of course. One important thing that I do is I always have my video previews at the exact same resolution as the sequence's frame size. And like I said before, I always render in the exact same resolution as whatever the sequence is, never anything more or less, otherwise Premiere screws it up. And most of the clips on my timeline actually already had been converted to cineform from whatever they were before, probably MP4s that came off of the A7S IIs that were used to record this video. And the reason for that is cineform is GPU accelerated, so it really gives you a buttery, wonderfully smooth timeline. I think I probably mentioned all this, but it bears repeating. Now, one of the greatest things about cineform is that it allows you to do a smart render, which is, monumentally valuable and has saved all of us just hours and hours and days of time. And I'm going to show you that right now. You just have to check that little checkbox, the one that says Match Sequence Settings. That's assuming that you set up your sequence settings correctly in the first place, so you better not get that wrong. So anyway, the first time that you render to cineform, it's going to be really slow because it's, rendering. But the second time, and this is just an example from a completely different project that I'm going to show you here, all you have to do is take that rendered video, put it on a layer above everything else, and then only cut out the sections that you need to change, then make your fixes, and the second time you render, most of the video, because it's already been rendered, does not need to be re-encoded, and it'll literally just use exactly the same information as it did the first time, and it's basically just copying that information over. So it's incredibly fast. Okay, now back to the razor blade video, where turns out we have a problem with the rendering. If you notice that the percentage has not changed for a while, and that the estimated time remaining just keeps going up, or that it's frozen, then you're probably encountering some kind of rendering bug, and you might as well just hit cancel and try something different. Now, one thing you could do is render out previews on the timeline, so turn all of that yellow stuff green. However, I have already rendered the very beginning of this video earlier when I thought I was done, but I really wasn't. So I'm just going to overlay that on top of everything, and it doesn't even turn green up there, it just turns empty. So it's like super duper already rendered. And then I'm not going to overlay the video on anything beyond that point, because I made a whole ton of little changes to clips and to the color correction of stuff. So I will have to re-render most of the video. So here we see, because I'd already successfully rendered that beginning part, it's able to cruise right past it. So I don't know what render problem it was encountering the second time that it didn't encounter the first time, and we may never know. And you can see that it rendered the entire thing very, very quickly because all of that footage had already been converted to cineform before I even brought it in the first place. So very, very quick. And of course, now that it has rendered, I have to watch it to make sure that there are no problems at all that might have been missed by me or that might have been introduced during the render. This is another golden rule. You absolutely must watch a video that will go up on YouTube. Even if you made just one tiny fix, you pretty much have to watch the entire thing all over again, because there are 1,001 things that could have happened to your video during its very last render. You just have to watch the video. Now I have a script that automatically moves it into our transcode system called filemover, and I'm not going to explain how this script works because I don't even know how it works. I entered a trance for an hour, and when I woke up, the script was magically finished in all of its absurd complexity. So you can look at it if you want. Anyway, once the file is moved over, it will open an Explorer window at that location. And there it is. That's actually a watch folder. And there's a copy of Media Encoder running on some machine somewhere, which will spit out the transcoded files into this big delivery folder. So these are every single different resolution that is used on Floatplane. So these would all have to be individually uploaded in some kind of weird manual process by Luke or someone else who knew the system, because it was very early days for Floatplane back then. And I would simply have to send off an email saying that the files were available. Nowadays, it only spits out one single 4K MP4 file, and that can just whoop, go right onto Floatplane very easily. And I will also upload a thumbnail and then send out an email telling people the video is now available. Chapter 14, YouTube version. If you look down at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that it is now January 20, 2017, and I am making a change to the video before it goes up on YouTube. So Floatplane, our early access platform, had this video for 20 days before YouTube had it. And I looked at the video and I thought, what the heck is going on with that screen? When they were filming the A-roll, they should have tilted the screen downwards a little bit to get rid of that horrible glare. So I decided I'm going to do what I can using color correction. And I'm using a lumetri effect with a mask so that it only affects the screen. And that will be placed into the master clip, but I can't do that right now because the ripple tangent does not work on master clip. That's a feature request I've had for a while now. Now, I really shouldn't be doing this because ideally the YouTube and Floatplane versions of a video should be exactly the same, except that the YouTube one has integrations and the Floatplane one does not. Speaking of which, if you look closely, you can see that I've already put the integration into the sequence. That's the orange FreshBooks integration 08 Linus Blade.mov. And I also put some additional B-roll on top of it right there at the end, just because I wasn't quite satisfied with it. So anyway, once I do my color correction, and it does look a little bit better, it's not perfect, but once I do that, I will render this out, and that's it. That video goes up on YouTube. Now, these days we have a lot more review steps in place. We have the writer review the video before it's rendered. We have Linus review every video before they go out, and we have another editor review the video as well. With all those steps together, we should have caught every single error before the video even goes up on Floatplane. Now, there have been many changes around here since this tutorial was recorded. We now shoot on red cameras, and we're actually shooting 8K footage. So we're now working in 4K timelines, and we also export to 4K cineform, which takes 4 times as long. Now, most people still can't appreciate 4K content because even if they have a 4K screen, YouTube's bitrate isn't even good enough to show it in all of its glory. But Linus says that as one of the top tech channels, we need to stay on the cutting edge, which I like to call the bleeding edge. I've had a lot of issues with red footage. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. I rendered that thing out using the same steps I showed you before, watched the whole thing to check for problems, and then sent it off to our transcode server to render it as a 4K MP4 to be uploaded to YouTube. And there it is, currently sitting at 1.7 million views. That's pretty good for our channel, and people seem to like it. It's a good video. The laptop's good too, although mine has had some thermal issues, which I hear is not all that uncommon. Anyway, that is what it's like to edit a video at Linus Media Group. Congratulations for watching the whole thing, but we're not done yet. I've got some bonus material for you here at the end of the tutorial. These are all extra credit chapters. And if any of it bores you, just skip straight to chapter 19, where I do the official conclusion, sign-off, whatever it is. Chapter 15, The Past. This is my personal career story, not my life story, my career story. And I'm putting this in here because I found it very, very valuable to learn these sorts of things about other people. And if you are just starting out in your career, you should try to find as many of these stories as you can, because then your expectations will become increasingly reasonable. As a kid, I was always very interested in television and cartoons and movies and computer games. Me and my older brother would always play computer games together, and we also drew comics together, which eventually started finding their way onto the internet as we created bobcomics.com, which is still up today. You can go there and see all the comics we published to the internet and also the animations that I made using Macromedia Flash 5. Newgrounds.com was a really big deal, so I would submit my animations there and get critique, and I was very active in the Flash forums. Eventually, my animations got good enough that I applied to an arts magnet school called Denver School of the Arts, and I got in to the Video Cinema Arts department. I had only done animation up until this point and never touched a camera nor an editing program, and I actually didn't learn much about video editing at that school, but it was definitely a great experience to be surrounded by a lot of other creative people who understood this stuff. I won a lot of awards for my animations. Looking back on them, they're really not that great, but for a high schooler, they were pretty good. Before I graduated from Denver School of the Arts, I got a $25,000 scholarship offer from the Art Institute of Colorado. However, it was a 4-year program that would have cost $100,000 in tuition, unless I'm remembering this wrong. And the scholarship they were offering could not be put all on the first year, or I would have gone. The Art Institute didn't seem like a particularly good value for my money, so I turned down that scholarship. I also took a look at a couple of different 2D animation schools and courses and so on. I had a lot of them sending me stuff in the mail, so I checked that out. And I don't know, I have so much respect for animators, and it's such a wonderful medium and something that I want to be a part of. But it really seems like you're just a cog in a large machine. And I just kind of got the impression that I would be disposable. And besides, my drawing skills were never really that good, so I probably would have become a 3D animator, if anything. So after bouncing around directionless for a few years, I eventually ended up in Vancouver, BC, because I have family out here. I had no better plan, so I decided that I wanted to go to BCIT for either programming or television broadcast. And I chose the latter because I already had quite a bit of experience with television stuff. So long story short, I did that for 2 years. And when I graduated, I made the fatal mistake of not having a job already lined up. So don't make that mistake, because I bummed around for half a year, floating from job to job, basically just freelancing. I worked on 2 very low-budget movies. I worked the back tower at Hastings Racetrack. And eventually, Edsel Yago got in contact with me. I'd gone to school with him. They needed some NCIX Tech Tips videos edited for them on a contract basis. Now, Edsel had joined Linus Media Group because he watched the channel on YouTube and thought it was cool, and he did his internship with Linus.
Restraints chafe sometimes, but it's a really good place to work.
And he actually never came back to school after that. I would call him and say, "Ed, where's your homework? What are you doing? You haven't been to school in a while." And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." The first NCIX Tech Tips video I ever edited took me, I think, 7 hours, because I had no idea what any of this stuff was. I was Googling everything that Linus would say, and he was talking so fast, and he would kind of flub his words, and I had no script. So I had no idea what any of the computer components were. No one had ever explained this to me, so I didn't know what to do. But eventually I got better and faster at editing those. Linus wanted me on full time. It was actually between Linus Tech Tips and Bling Digital. I chose Linus Media Group, even though they were paying a lot less, because I felt like there was a lot of potential there. And I regretted that decision so hard for the first 3 weeks. It was horrible. And I've said this before. It's because there was just so much work to do. I didn't know what to do. There was nobody to train me. It was the NCIX problem all over again. I was so unfamiliar with all this stuff. I was trying to figure out, how can I edit quicker? I had to stay late on most days just to get everything done. I was editing basically NCIX Tech Tips, Linus Tech Tips, fast as possible, and eventually they also added Channel Superfun. The edits weren't nearly as good as they are today, because I would have to rush them out as quickly as I could. And I asked Linus, "Do you want high quality or high quantity? And he said both. And internally I thought, no, there's no way. It's got to be quantity. So what I did was I decided, okay, I'm going to finish the video, and then if I have time, I will go back and I'll add extra things and I'll improve the quality. But I have to get the video done first. And so that worked decently well. Eventually we moved the office to the new warehouse and we got more and more employees, and the channel has grown significantly larger than I ever imagined. Back when I joined, it was just like a 4-person team. And here we are today. I can safely say that working at Linus Media Group is the hardest job I've ever had, and also the best job I've ever had. We have access to some of the latest and greatest cutting-edge technology, and that's really cool. I get to ride around on e-bikes for my job. I do product reviews on YouTube.
Product reviews? Oh yeah. My god, you have the best job in the world!
I got really lucky. The only reason I have this job is because I accidentally networked when I was at BCIT. So that's why I always say that networking is really important. Well, I had a great time. So that's the past. Let's talk about the future. Now, a lot of the editing that you saw here today is what I like to call paint-by-numbers editing. It doesn't require all that much creativity because the scriptwriter has already determined basically what shots should go where and what the shots should be and the general flow of the entire thing, and your job as an editor is to just assemble it. Now, this is very different from the kind of editing where you have to make up the story. You have to figure out the story. Channel Superfun videos are a lot more like that. We just film a whole bunch of stuff, and you find the narrative thread afterwards. Here's the thing, though. Because we put all of our shot numbers into the script, and we use comments in Word to show exactly what part of the script a particular shot belongs to, it is conceivable that a program could be written to simply look at the edited A-roll and transcribe that, then compare the transcription to what's on the script itself, then look into the comments to see the B-roll numbers, match those numbers to the actual B-roll clips, and just like that, put all of the B-roll onto the timeline precisely where it belongs. This process would take, I don't know, less than a minute, and it would save us potentially hours. So, it would be magnificent if such a program existed, but it doesn't. Actually, if this does exist, please let me know in the comments. Thank you, please. Anyway, such a program would still not be able to make any creative decisions. Obviously, you'd have to slip each piece of B-roll and move it around a little bit to make it actually work. You'd have to do all the graphics, all the animation, all the, music, all the sound effects, everything that I showed you here today. Except for the initial, admittedly tedious process of matching up B-roll clips to A-roll clips, right? By the way, what I just showed you is a Premiere feature called Automate to Sequence. You still have to order the clips manually, and you still have to put markers on the timeline manually. It just moves them from one place to the other for you. It's not the true automation that I desire. So what else? I'll tell you about a few personal goals of mine. I think it's important for everyone to continue to strive to improve themselves. Let's see. I want to learn more art and animation. It's been almost a decade since I made Last Saskatchewan Pirate, and my animation skills have really not come much further since then, and it's definitely something I want to know how to do, even though I don't want it to be my main career. I also want to learn a crap ton of After Effects, and I'll probably learn Blender as well, because the 3D capabilities of that program have only been getting better. And as for the brain-computer interface that I mentioned